Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube from the Pillar Exterior stage. I'm Ravi Lulla. That is Alex Sindelar. I know it doesn't look like DB. You probably noticed that very quickly if you're joining us on the streams here. Alex Sindelar, how are you, bud?
I'm doing great. I think I do look a little bit like DB, don't you?
I think so. You have a similar build.
Yeah, very handsome, kind.
Definitely could have played Division I running back.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I'm right there. All 135 pounds.
Listen, that's you'd have been, they'd been hard to find you though behind the offensive line.
That's what I'm saying.
Right? Like,
I mean, if they're all 6'4" to 6'7", I can just hide right behind them.
Yeah, just hide behind an offensive lineman.
Absolutely.
You're good to go. Oh, I'll probably jump on one's back and just
ride him down. Yeah,
a little piggyback ride.
That's a good idea. I don't know. That's
not happened yet
in football.
Alex has covered Creighton baseball and basketball for the likes of SB Nation, and now he's joining us here on the program. We appreciate you being here, and we've got a good amount to cover this morning.
Yeah, we got some exciting stuff.
We really do. Coming up on the show today, we have our friend Matt DeMarinis from the White and Blue Review.
It's exciting.
Will be joining us at 8 a.m. This is the earliest I've ever gotten the lineup out, by the way. At 8.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. At 8.
I mean, I could derail you for the next, 9 minutes.
I think we'll get there. At 8:45, we'll talk to Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider. Then at 9, we will talk to Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. We'll get into some Husker football and baseball with Bruntzy, and then we'll wrap up the show. Since we have a new host here, just for today, DB will be back tomorrow. We were going to do a little Hurrdat Hot Seat. I've got some burning questions for you.
Yeah, it's been a while since you had to do a hot seat. Now, did you ever do a hot seat with Damon when he came back? Did you ask him, get to know you questions, even though,
We've done a couple.
Uh-huh.
Usually the show is so off the rails by that point that it's hard to keep it locked in.
Right.
But we have done a couple. I'm excited, though. I've got some good questions for you.
Okay.
I've also got some questions for one Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to talk about Dennis.
I didn't realize he had left CBS Sports to be Scott Frost's personal publicist.
Well, and so
so let me set this. Before, if you're not aware, I could generously call it a fluff piece, came out from CBS Sports yesterday, written by one Dennis Dodd, regarding Scott Frost's desire to coach once again.
Honestly, it was I think it's the first real media check-in Scott Frost has done.
Yes.
In 2 years?
I mean, I think he's been off the job for a year and a half, so at least that long.
Right.
I think it's his first real public comment since then.
Because we saw him at the Oregon game where he was dapping up coaches and players as they were going into the locker room at halftime or before the game this last season.
Yeah.
But that's about the last we've seen the Scott Frost. This is the first time that he's really appeared in the public.
Yeah, I don't think he's made it's certainly not any extensive public comments since he was let go at Nebraska.
Uh-huh.
And he, obviously he chose a very friendly person to do this with. If you haven't written the piece, you're not going to learn anything about Scott Frost, really, because Dennis Dodd doesn't appear to have asked any questions, at least certainly not any difficult ones.
Well, and to start it off, I mean, Dennis Dodd says, hey, I talked to Scott Frost for 70 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I think total words in the article are
from Scott Frost or in general?
Oh, are Dennis Dodd's himself. And so he didn't.
There's like 3 quotes from
Frost. I think I counted 5 quotes from Scott Frost, and it's all like
a sentence each.
Very bland, vanilla, generic,
just
boilerplate.
Mayonnaise. I would like to coach again.
Yeah, the coaching is what I do best. And it's like, nah, I don't think that. Uh-oh.
It's where I belong.
You got paid $15 million to no longer do that. I don't think that's a really good indictment of how good of a coach you are.
Yeah.
And to say with words that that's what you're great at, I think that just shows you where Scott Frost is mentally as he's holed himself up in Scottsdale, Arizona.
It kind of reminds me, it's sort of a microcosm of the entire Scott Frost experience in general, right?
Big time.
Total lack of self-awareness and zero accountability for what went wrong.
But just this overwhelming confidence
Yes.
that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, unearned confidence, really, right?
Correct.
And so I'm reading through this article, and I'm just waiting for anything that makes any sense whatsoever, right? And Dennis Dodd, I'm sure he's a nice person. We maybe have even talked to him at some point. I have no idea. I'm guessing he won't talk to us after this, which is fine. But Dennis Dodd goes through an incredible amount of mental gymnastics to try and make it seem like going 16-31 at Nebraska and getting fired from your alma mater, which the last thing they wanted to do was fire you. I mean, the last thing they wanted to do was fire Scott Frost. And it's only briefly mentioned that he went 16-31, and that's why he got fired. And then Dodd goes through this entire exercise of, well, they've fired a lot of coaches, and they've gone through. He actually lasted longer than both the AD that hired him and the AD that fired him. And, goes, and they've had a lot of presidents in that time as well, as if trying to justify the total bleep show that was the Scott Frost era without ever mentioning the bleep that Scott Frost rained down on himself in the program by the way he acted.
Yeah, I mean, the way that he buried that 16 and
yes
30, I mean, he buried it deep into the article, and it was a quick blip, and then it just went on
and then justification.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I mean, so who do you think reached out to who? Do you think Dennis Dodd reached out to Scott Frost? Or do you think Scott Frost was like, hey, I want to get back into this a little bit. Dennis, I'll throw you $1,000 if you write me a fluff piece on CBS Sports on the week of the Final Four. I mean, this is going to get buried so quickly.
It felt like Scott Frost's agent was looking for a friendly voice to let people know that he wanted back out on the market, which that's a bad sign if you're a coach, because if you're a good coach, people know you're available. If you're a bad coach, people don't care that you're available. We talk about this in basketball all the time. It's like if you're wide open all the time, there's probably a reason you're wide open. Like maybe you don't shoot that ball.
Correct.
Like you're the guy they want to shoot the ball.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a great sign. If you've been a head coach, he won National Coach of the Year at UCF. He had a run as offensive coordinator at Oregon. Like he's got enough of a resume that he should be able to get at least a coordinator job again.
Without a doubt.
So with that all being said, if nobody's trying to hire you, maybe there's a reason you're open.
Yep.
Right.
And is he trying to go to like Northern Arizona? Is he trying to get a assistant coaching job at Arizona State? I mean, it said in the article that he doesn't want to leave Scottsdale.
Yeah.
That he's become
really hard to leave the area.
Yeah. He said, yeah, it'd be really difficult to go to a small college town again and do this all over again. It's so nice being a dad. And it's like, I understand that point from Scott Frost's perspective.
That's terrific.
Yeah, that's great. Maybe you should continue to do that. And maybe like selling used Chevys or doing literally anything other than coaching is probably going to be better suited for you going forward. Like coach your little league team. I mean, coach the youth. Go be a high school offensive coordinator and teach gym or something.
Or just collect your $15 million, shut up and leave us alone.
That works too.
That feels like an option here.
But like fade. Like I think Scott needs to learn that he needs to fade into the background. He's trying to get back. He's trying to worm his way back into that limelight. And it just feels so desperate. And for Dennis to write that puff piece about him.
I get why Scott Frost would want him to write the piece. I do.
Absolutely.
I don't know how, as a journalist, you can sit there and look yourself in the mirror writing that piece without bringing anything up in terms of how he got to this place, right? Because, yeah, the 16-31 is bad, not great, right? But losing coaches get hired as coordinators and stuff all the time, especially when you're considered a good offensive mind like Scott Frost is. I think Scott Frost probably is still a good offensive mind. I think his play designs were pretty solid. I just think maybe the head coaching is not for him, at least at that level, right?
Right.
But I don't know how you're Dennis Dodd and you don't look at the situation and be like, okay, why does no one want to hire Scott Frost? Right? Why? Like, what led to this besides the losing, right? Because losing coaches get hired as coordinators all the time.
Right.
I mean, that's literally their next job move 98% of the time. So it's like, oh, maybe we should do a little digging. Well, if the memory's not great for Dennis Dodd, maybe we do a little dig. Maybe he's not super plugged into the Nebraska scene. That's fine.
Look, and it's so hard to find a counter argument, I mean, you'd have to dig really deep.
Or just Google.
Well, exactly. I mean, you Google Scott Frost, Nebraska, and you will get literally every hit piece that was well written and justified of
and
why
accurate.
Scott Frost did not work here, and accurate. And yet Dennis Dodd didn't bring up any of this stuff in this article. And it was just, I mean, it seemed like it was just a favor to Scott Frost.
It really did, or his agent or someone that found a friendly voice in Dennis Dodd. Here's where it really, I mean, listen, all you have to do is Google Scott Frost margarita, right?
Scott Frost golden tea.
Scott Frost golden tea. Scott Frost late for practice. Like what? Google any of these things, right? Our friend Michael Severe went on I think it was on his show, Let It Fly, on his podcast, and went through the fact that he's got coaches telling him that Scott Frost is late to practice every day, that he's not at practice half the time. And then when he comes into practice on Wednesday or Thursday, he tries to scrap the installs that they did and do his own deal, even though he hasn't been there for 3 days or whatever, right? Like, let's get into that as to why he maybe doesn't have a job anymore. Let's get into that as to maybe why nobody else wants to hire him, because everybody else was paying attention. Or, again, the search firms that these people hire for millions of dollars did a simple Google search on Scott Frost.
Which they will.
You would think they have to.
I don't think any job offers are going to come out of Dennis's article on CBS Sports.
I don't. It makes me. That thing made me unreasonably angry. The mental gymnastics Dennis Dodd went through to avoid talking about the. I mean, listen. First of all, to avoid talking about the main reason he got fired, 16-31, right? Just in passing. That's not a big deal. Just 16-31. Worst coach in 60 years at Nebraska, literally. And then to go further and not say anything about all of the other stuff. Because I'll be honest, if he was 16-31 and was doing everything right, he might not have got fired yet.
That's right.
Like, that's the crazy thing about this. The degree to which Nebraska did not want to fire Scott Frost is off the charts. He went 3-9 in season 4. Was it 5? 4?
Season 4, yeah.
Season 4. He went 4-9 or 3-9 and still kept his job for the next year. That is not something that happens anywhere else.
No, and the only reason that he got a leash as long as he did is because of his status.
Yes.
Because he won National Coach of the Year, because he did what he did at UCF, and because he played at Nebraska, and because he, all of the things that didn't work for Scott Frost are all of the reasons that Dennis Dodd wrote this piece.
Yes, and he doesn't mention any of them.
He does not.
Not a single one.
Right.
It is infuriating.
I mean, you still think about the onside kick. I'm sorry.
I'd forgotten about the onside kick, to be honest with you, because there's so much other crap.
Right.
There was just so much other stuff that I've forgotten some of the in-game, what the F are you doing, Scott? Like, I've forgotten about some of that because of all the other stuff, because he was too drunk to go see a 5-star quarterback whose last name is on the stadium. Like that, that's the level of ineptitude we're talking about here, not just 16-31. To be fair, we probably could have lived with 16-31 for the rest of the year in year 5.
I mean, if he made one bowl game, a single bowl game, we're probably having a completely different conversation. Scott Frost might still be head coach if he just has one successful season
at any point. He probably is still the head coach,
and he couldn't do it with all the resources in the world, with the entire fan base backing him, with the local media publications like the World Herald saying, I mean, they put out a entire comic book that basically said this is the return of the prodigal son.
Oh yeah, they was an entire comic book, and it's embarrassing to look at.
He had literally every reason to succeed at Nebraska if he just tried.
And let me just say this, because I've been on this wagon since basically year 2.5 with Frost. I don't think he can change. I don't think he's capable of it. He's almost 50 years old. You know how many people actually change after they're like 40?
No, none.
Almost none, right?
It takes grand circumstances for somebody to change when they're at that age.
Maybe this qualifies as grand circumstances, right? Maybe failing miserably at your alma mater and failing to the point where, you're drinking and you're missing practice and whatever. Maybe that's the thing that's grand enough to get you to change your ways, but I need you to say it out loud and not just be like, I'm ready to coach again, right? Because that makes me think you learn nothing here.
Correct.
It makes me think that, especially the way the piece was written, that you think it's Nebraska's fault for having some turnover at president or having some turnover at AD, or they fired Frank Solich and they they made it sound like, oh, Nebraska's never going to be happy. It's like, you were 16-31, bro.
Yeah, with every resource available.
This isn't firing 58-19 Frank Solich. This isn't firing 9-win Bo Pelini.
Now, I mean, if Scott Frost wants to coach at like a junior college or NAIA or, I mean, a D3, D2, absolutely. Like, let him do that. Go. Maybe that's what he's asking for too. Maybe he doesn't want to be in a top tier program.
I think he'd be a better fit at a place where people don't pay attention.
Correct.
So maybe like Arizona State's a perfect place for him.
But even then, I mean, that's still kind of high stakes because they're big.
They're Big 12 now. Yeah, but I don't know that anybody cares. You know what I mean?
That's true. I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, they still care to a degree, and he does carry a lot of weight with his name. Mm-hmm. And I think any major program that does hire him from here on out, if they do decide to hire him, they will get scrutinized for it.
Maybe like a New Mexico. That's close to Arizona.
There you go. I think that'd be perfect for him.
He could be a Lobo.
Yeah, and he could be an offensive coordinator or quarterbacks coach. I mean, he needs to go low stakes first before he can re-enter that high, Division I, Power 6, like team again. Like, he cannot go straight from sitting on his couch for the past 2 years, to going to a major D1 Power 6 program. I don't think that's in the cards for him. He needs to remake himself.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why the article got written, because his phone has been silent.
Yeah, he needs. I mean, we saw it a lot with guys that would come through Alabama. An analyst role would make a lot of sense for him.
Absolutely.
Go somewhere, kind of rehab your image, be quiet for a couple years, stop talking for a couple years, a couple more years, Scott. Like, the silence was nice from you. You chirping up here to be like, hey, maybe it wasn't my fault. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was Nebraska's fault.
But he needs to find a new beginning.
He needs to go to an analyst thing, kind of pay his dues again. But again, this is a guy that I don't think has any self-awareness. He certainly didn't here. And it didn't seem like he did during his playing days. Why would I believe that in 25 years he learned nothing and then all of a sudden he's like, well, I'm very mature and self-aware now?
Mm-hmm.
I find that incredibly unlikely. And so we're in this place where Dennis Dodd's trying to do mental gymnastics on his behalf to be like, well, Nebraska's super dysfunctional. Listen, I get Nebraska's had their issues. A lot of places have their issues, and you don't have head coaches that are missing practice and missing meetings and not going to visit recruits because they drank too many margaritas. Like, a lot of places are dysfunctional, and you don't have that. If none of that was true, he'd have a job right now.
Right. But I think he just needs to learn that discipline in life. He needs to get regimented. He needs a schedule. He needs to be able to figure all that stuff out first. And he needs to prove to himself before he can prove to somebody else that he can do something like that. And I don't think he's at that point yet. I mean, I don't know if he ever will be. If he's having his agent reach out to CBS Sports, I mean, it's not even Sports Illustrated, which is what it used to be. But I mean, it's not ESPN. It's not Fox Sports. It's CBS Sports. It's a back page kind of on their publication. And it's like, man, if that's what you're doing, especially on the week of the Final Four, if that's what you're choosing to do, yeah, that's desperate. And it lacks that, I don't know, that ability to be self-aware. You're exactly right. It's tough to see.
So I got a message from somebody who would know. I'm not going to say who it is, but apparently it's very common knowledge out there amongst ADs that he's basically untouchable because of all the off-field stuff.
Right.
That he is, unless he starts at a much lower level, whether as a coordinator, I'm guessing as a coordinator at a lower level, or whatever else that looks like, that there's no chance because of all the off-field stuff. And this is a person that 100% would know that this is accurate. So we're not just talking out of our butts here because we don't like Scott Frost, which I don't, by the way. I'm not going to hide and be like, oh, I think Scott. No, I don't like him. I didn't like him when he was here. I liked him when he got hired, I'll be honest.
Sure.
I think everybody did. Most people, except for the people that played with him, which probably should have been a red flag.
Right.
But I was happy he was here. I thought he was the right hire. But you've got plenty of years of evidence to tell you that this guy is toxic, that this guy is not good for your programs, and that he is, frankly, probably not emotionally mature enough to run a football program.
Needs to go to JUCO.
I don't even know where he should go.
Go to Garden City. They could do what was that show called where they did Last Chance U? What a perfect marriage that would be.
Although the worst thing in the world is to have cameras on that man 24/7.
But great television.
It'd be incredible television.
Yeah.
But you thought that one guy that was crazy and running off his mouth to players, and I think he does a TikTok show now. He pops up on my feed every once in a while. I'm like, I don't want to watch this. You thought that guy was bad news or a hard or a tough hang. Imagine, he doesn't want to go to a small college town. Imagine him go to a JUCO town. There's like 4,000 people in those places.
That'd be incredible. It would be Last Chance U on so many levels, both for the players
and the
head coach.
That's the next level of Last Chance U.
That's what I'm saying.
It's Last Chance U for the coaches. I love this idea.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
What are we doing? Come on.
Hey, Netflix, let's make it happen.
Hurrdat. Let's
get it.
Let's reignite it.
Let's get him at Northern Arizona University. For the record, Lincoln has 50,000 more people than Scottsdale does. So I don't know what his complaining about small college towns is. I'm just going to put that out there. I hate that when people are like, oh, it's Nebraska. It must be a small town. It's like Scottsdale has 50,000 fewer people than Lincoln. Knock it off, Scott.
It is in the Phoenix metropolitan area, though.
I don't care.
Well, it matters.
It's a desert.
It is that.
It's in the Phoenix metropolitan area, like Lincoln's in the Omaha metropolitan area. It's fine.
Nothing should be alive there. It's a desert. They don't have any water. You need water to survive.
Arizona, nothing should be alive there. That's Alex Sindelar. I'm Ravi Lulla. We will be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio. And, I want to maybe talk about some of that alleged dysfunction in the Nebraska AD and university places coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. Had some comments about the Scott Frost discussion earlier. Travis just says Dennis Dodd is a loser.
Ooh, okay.
Have a hard time refuting it at this point.
Just calling people losers now.
TK, when you suggested that he go to Garden City, TK, who is in Kansas, says, don't you dare put him in my state.
No, TK, that's where he belongs. I'm sorry.
He does kind of have a Kansas vibe to him.
A little bit.
Kansas he might be okay in North Dakota.
Ooh, yeah, he's a Bismarck kind of guy.
He seems like a Bismarck.
He does.
He's probably not good enough to coach at NDSU. Maybe UND.
No. Maybe, yeah, I would think so.
Maybe UND. That seems about right.
Does Alaska Fairbanks have a college football program?
I think University of Alaska does. I don't think they're Division I or Division.
I wouldn't think so.
I think they're Division II, maybe.
I know they have a hockey team.
I would imagine.
And they used to play a kind of like how the Maui Invitational exists.
Yeah.
They used to have an invitational up in Alaska too, an early season tournament.
I think I remember that.
I think they need to bring that back.
Let's do a football invitational at the University of Alaska.
I'm in.
I think only about 12 people can go because of seating, but it's okay.
Yeah, Nash Hutmacher would fall. He would fit in just fine. He'd be like, Dad?
Have you seen Nash Hutmacher's dad?
He's huge.
He's the biggest human being I've ever seen.
I know.
He looks like he's a professional strongman.
It's amazing.
I was like, how is Nash the small one in the family? Besides the mom. His mom's tiny, which is hilarious when they're sitting next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Nash is the small male in that family. which is hilarious
That's great.
because he had to lose 45 pounds to get to 285.
What a great story. I mean, that is like the quintessential Nebraska story.
It really is. I love it. TK says, whoa, calm down. Send him out east. Where's out east, though? Ooh, West Virginia.
Oh, we go to like Holy Cross?
Do they have a football team?
I assume so.
He wouldn't fit in the Northeast.
You don't think so?
No.
Mm.
No. He has certain inclinations I think would make him unwelcome there.
I don't know. I feel like he would, like the Boston area.
You think
like
so?
where just everyone's just a really mean. Like I think he deserves that for a little while, right?
Good live radio edit there. I appreciate that.
Sorry.
He feels like a West Virginia Tech type of guy. I think that's a real school. I think West Virginia Tech is like a D2 school.
Look, it sounds fake, so I'm going to assume that
that it's a D2 school.
Uh-huh.
So here's the question that I have for, and I know how I feel about this, but I might be out on an island here. So I'm going to ask you, and if you want to give us a call, 888-638-4876, you can certainly do that as well. But is there any world in which Nebraska fans are rooting for the success of Scott Frost in his post-Nebraska days? Because I saw a tweet yesterday from one of the Hurrdat fan podcasts for the Huskers, right? That I don't know if they were being sarcastic or not, but it's written, so it's hard to tell. Where they said, "Hey, we wish Scott nothing but the best, whatever." I hope he never wins a football game again.
There's one way that I could see, especially the Husker fan base, rooting for Scott Frost again.
Is that if we're good?
Bingo.
If Rule gets it going.
If Rule wins 9-10 games consistently for like 5 years, and then suddenly Scott Frost is a complete afterthought. It was just this dark period, and then Scott gets it going somewhere. I mean, not to the degree where like Nebraska's playing him for championships, because I think there would be a lot of bad blood there.
It's got to be like an FCS school, though, right?
Exactly.
Like it can't be a Power 2 school.
Right.
It has to be like a lesser, like, oh, he just wasn't cut out for it here, but we're happy. I mean, kind of like we did with Frank Solich, right? Although the circumstances with Solich were very different.
Very different.
But he goes to Ohio. It's a step down in terms of a program. He's playing at, a group of 5 school. And then people were rooting for him to be successful.
Correct.
Right? I think it would have to be something like that, where it's a clear step below.
And a majority of the fan base believes that Solich was unjustly and unfairly fired. I do believe that to be true, but I think a lot of people knew that Scott Frost very much deserved to be fired. So it is if success comes for Nebraska football's program, then I do believe
there's a pathway
that people will soften on Scott Frost.
So
because again, it'll just be a hiccup in the entire history of the program.
Remind me, how old were you in 2003?
I was 11.
Okay, so you were maybe old enough to remember. So
yeah,
at the time, I don't think the majority of people thought that he shouldn't be fired. I think retroactively, because we found out that Steve Peterson is a pile.
Yeah, it didn't turn out well.
Right? No, yeah. But a lot of it, I think, has to do more with Steve Peterson than it did with Frank Solich, because I think a lot of people were frustrated with Solich at the time, right? He had the 7-7 season the year before he got fired, made some changes. They got better in 2003. But I think a lot of people were like, hey, this isn't who Nebraska is. And coming off of where Nebraska had been, that really wasn't who Nebraska should be, right? Like that's right. At the time, that was a fair assessment of the situation. But I really feel like a lot of the retroactive love for Frank Solich came out of the retroactive hate for Steve Peterson.
Correct.
Where it was, oh, this guy sucks. We maybe treated this other guy too harshly.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, because Solich was an assistant for so long, and because he was part of winning programs, I mean, it's hard not to see like a legend and give him a legendary status
for sure. And he was way better than not at Nebraska as the head coach even.
Yeah, and those shoes were huge to fill, and I think he tried to fill them.
Listen, obviously the 2001 team played for national title.
Yep.
But he's got the last conference championship in Nebraska, 99. And that team was the 99 team was really good. If they had been able to hold on to the football at all, they're playing Florida State for a national championship instead of Virginia Tech.
Right.
Like that is a really, really good football team, probably one of the 2 best teams in the country that year. Obviously, 2002 happened. You lose Eric Crouch, and you've got some turnover there. But he did a very good job at Nebraska, especially considering what we've seen Nebraska turn into.
Right.
And I don't know. I think that has helped a lot. I also think you're right. His legendary status with Nebraska helped him a lot. Obviously, that has not helped Scott Frost, but he also didn't win here at all. And the way it went down, I can't stress this enough. The way it went down, where he is considered untouchable, as I heard, I'm not just making this up, as I've heard from someone who would know, he is considered untouchable by high major ADs. One of which was before he even came to Nebraska. This is because there was a narrative out there that maybe he went off the rails after things started going bad at Nebraska. This is who he's been.
He was never on the rails.
There are no rails. It's like the line in Friends. Like the line is a dot to Scott Frost. He doesn't know where it is. He can't see it. He's so far past the line. He's just like, what's that over there? Is that do I have like a speck on my glasses? What's going on there?
Yeah. So, I mean, back to the original point. I don't think there's ever going to be a day like there was this last season for Nebraska football where they bring back Scott Frost.
But you think there's a portion of the fan base that might eventually be like, oh, it's kind of nice to see him succeed.
I think it'll be like a hearty chuckle and then a good for you and then a swig of beer and that's it. I think that will be just amount of care that Nebraska fans will pay to him, but they'll be like, that's fine that he's doing fine. I don't think there's going to be, a lot of fanfare. I don't think people are going to be ecstatic about it. I don't think that'll exist.
I will say if he ever succeeds for whatever reason, which I don't think is going to happen because I don't think he's wired that way. Mm-hmm. First of all, I don't think he's wired to change his behavior. And B, I don't think he's wired to be good at a high-profile job. But if it ever happens that way, I swear to you, I will be like burn it to the ground angry. Because I don't feel like he deserves it. And I'm not the guy, I'm not the one who gets to decide who deserves what, but I will be mad about it. 100%. Let's get to Wyatt on line one here. What's to talk about Scott Frost? Wyatt, you got about a minute. What's up?
I'm saying I'm glad that Damon's not there because I'm enjoying the low-hanging fruit conversation today.
I love fruit.
Absolutely.
And what you're saying about when we forgive Frost, like it would have to be a special set of circumstances where he would actually change and then basically apologize to the fan base and talk about it and don't just say, I don't want to talk about Nebraska like he did in that interview. Which he did have like more than like 3 quotes in that article.
No, that was about it. He did not talk a lot, and he certainly didn't take accountability for anything.
70-minute interview, barely said anything. Barely anything made it into the article itself.
So, yeah, I mean, he would have to change and then admit it for us to even, consider forgiveness, I think.
Wyatt, we appreciate the call, and I think you're right. I think he's right. I think he'd have to take some sort of responsibility. That's all I wanted to do when he was here, was take any kind of responsibility for what was happening. Coming up next, I do want to get into what I talked about with some of the alleged dysfunction within the athletic department in that Dennis Dodd piece. We've got more coming up on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Alex Sindelar here with me. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're brought to you on the Pillar Exterior stage. And we're brought to you by the Omaha Supernovas. Don't forget, tonight is Military and First Responder Appreciation Night. They'll be recognizing some military and first responders at the match tonight at 7 p.m. at CHI Health Center. And if you are a military member or a first responder, you can get special prices on tickets, $5 for upper bowl, $10 for lower bowl. Make sure you go to supernovas.com for your chance to get tickets. Well, not your chance to get tickets, you just buy them.
I mean, that is getting a chance.
It is your opportunity.
Yeah.
Opportunity is probably a better word there than chance, but you can just go ahead and get those tickets at supernovas.com for the match tonight at 7 p.m. So, Alex, one of the things that was brought up in that article was all the turnover in leadership positions at Nebraska, right? Certainly not Scott Frost's issues behaviorally. That couldn't have had a factor in his record at all. But the administrative issues which are real. I don't want to pretend like it's not real, right? But to put them in an article and not mention all the other things that Scott Frost did personally feels a little disingenuous. But obviously, we've been talking a lot about the AD and the president and all that kind of stuff here on this program with me and DB for the last, I guess, few weeks now. But I wanted to kind of try and paint an alternate picture about Trev Alberts here.
Okay, I like it.
Because the narrative that we've kind of been clinging to since...
Is it he's a supervillain? Because that's been your narrative for a while.
But why do we think he was a supervillain, right? Because we thought he was incredible at his job. We thought he was a Nebraska lifer. We thought Nebraska was in big trouble without him. Like, that's why he was the supervillain, because he betrayed Nebraska and left them in the lurch, right? Like, that's why he, in my mind, was being a supervillain. But I think there's an alternative narrative that we could paint here that I do think is true, because I'm going to give all facts here.
Okay.
And if you just look at him from a different perspective, maybe it changes how... I still think he's a D-bag, but maybe not a supervillain. Maybe he's just a bad guy that is super ambitious. Which, again, if he had just been like, hey, I'm an ambitious guy, I think this is a better opportunity for me to move on to other goals in my life. Be like, all right, I mean, that sucks, but okay, I get it. That's fine, right? That's not what it was.
You don't think so?
Well, that's not what he said.
Okay.
It may be what it was, but if you're doing a thing for one reason and saying it's for another, D-bag. Like, that's how I feel about it, right? If he had just been like, hey, I think A&M's a better opportunity. I love Nebraska, but it's more money. I think I've got access to better stuff here. I want to be in the SEC. Okay. Like, I disagree, and I think it's crappy, but what am I going to say to that?
Right.
Like, that's just how he feels about it.
Right. And it was his leadership above him that I think failed him. And I think he got sick of it.
Well,
I think
that's what he wants you to believe.
And that's what I'm going to believe, because I think it's easy to see that. It's easy to see that he was without a president for 290 days, was it?
It was about 7 months.
It was about 7 months.
But that is not an unusual amount of time for a president search to take. Go look around the country.
Sure.
That is not an unusual amount of time. So, yes, he may have been impatient, but I don't know that it was reasonable for him to be impatient in that moment.
But it felt like the border regions, were dragging their feet on it. And I think that's what he saw as well.
Well, they were dragging their feet on who he wanted.
Which is who they ended up hiring.
Which is hilarious.
Very funny. But also, it's like maybe they had him in their sights the entire time, and then Trev leaving spurred them.
Or maybe this was the time frame it was going to happen the whole time, and Trev was a big baby about it and just left because he didn't have the influence that he wanted.
I don't think that's the case, though.
You don't think so, but you don't know so.
I give him the benefit of the doubt because
But why? Hold on. That's why this alternative narrative is important.
Absolutely.
Because we've been giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Look, give it to me. Let's see if you can sway me, because I have been giving Trev the benefit of the doubt the entire time.
So had I until he left, and then I was like, maybe this guy just sucks.
And I still do. So,
well, let's see if we can change
swing
that.
Swing me, Ravi.
So
lay it out for me.
Let's see if we can. So first of all, was notoriously considered difficult to work with at ESPN. That's just part of what it was, right? Something to keep in mind, back of your mind, right? Ends up being the AD at Omaha. He feels it's necessary to bring them to the Division I level. I'm not going to argue with that, although I think there is an argument to be made that it's not necessary.
Okay.
But let's say that it is necessary to move to the Division I level. Cutting football makes a ton of sense, right?
Yep.
It's
big money pit.
Huge money pit, huge amount of scholarships. So to be in compliance, you'd have to have that many scholarships on the other side. So not only is it a money pit itself, then it becomes a money pit to try and even out the scholarships, right?
Right.
Football makes total sense. Why does he cut wrestling? Not a big number of scholarships, not a big money pit, hardly costs anything.
I think it was to come into compliance with Title IX again, wasn't it?
Yes, but you have a hugely successful program at Omaha Wrestling. You not going to cost you that much to continue that program and to even out the compliance, right? There's other places at Omaha that he could have made cuts in less successful programs that would have achieved the same results. Why was it wrestling?
I think there was kind of an effort to build wrestling back up down in Lincoln too. I think.
Okay, but is that a good reason to cut it at Omaha?
Absolutely.
Why? Why does Lincoln get preference over Omaha in that instance? If he's the AD of Omaha, he's not the AD of the university system.
Right, but
he should not be doing Lincoln's bidding in that job.
But why split? Why split the powers that be? Because UNO is Division I in wrestling.
Yes.
So why split that off, knowing that Nebraska? I think the move to the Big Ten happened after Trev became the AD at UNO.
I believe so.
I believe so. But in retrospect, because the Big Ten is, I think, they are the best conference in wrestling, aren't they?
Yeah, I believe they're premier wrestling conference.
So
Iowa,
basically,
Penn State, Nebraska.
It took all of the funding that would have gone to UNO wrestling, instead it ended up in Lincoln. Also, all of those wrestlers that were Division I level that were really good that would have ended up at Omaha, or would have had the decision to go to Lincoln or Omaha, end up in Lincoln anyways. And then suddenly Nebraska's competing for national titles in wrestling.
What you're describing
in
here,
Lincoln
happens in every other state in the country, in football, in basketball, in all these other sports.
Yeah, but with the population of the state of Nebraska,
you can recruit people from other places, right?
Absolutely.
So that's on Nebraska. That's not an Omaha problem. He was the AD at Omaha. Why is he doing Lincoln favors in that job? That's not his job.
It's the university system.
He's not the AD of the university system in that job. He is the AD for Omaha.
You're telling me that the Kearney AD, the Lincoln AD, and the Omaha AD don't talk to each other? There's no conversation had, and then the president oversees all of that, who's the boss of all of these ADs.
But he's under no obligation. It's the same reason they shuttered Alabama Birmingham football, and it was a disaster because they're like, oh, it's taking away from Alabama. UAB wanted to hire Jimbo Fisher, and Alabama wouldn't let them.
Right.
That's a toxic, dysfunctional reason to do anything.
Correct.
So best case scenario, maybe it's not Trev's fault, but it is a super toxic reason to do something.
But it's the right reason.
No, it's not the right reason.
Yeah, because it funnels all the resources into one program and makes that program better.
So why does Omaha exist in general? Like if you want to funnel all the resources to Lincoln, why does UNK or Omaha exist?
In terms of athletics?
In terms of a university. If they're all part of the university system.
Well, population bases. I think that dictates that.
Oh, it's 45 minutes away. What's the big deal?
Well, I mean, it's 45 minutes away. I mean, Omaha's not.
I understand in 1890 maybe it had sense to make two because 45 minutes is long. But, I mean, we got cars now. What's the point? What's the difference?
No big deal.
I mean, if you're going to make the argument, let's take it to its illogical conclusion.
I don't think that's a completely illogical conclusion. What I'm saying is that if you have athletic competition, you want to make sure that the competition is best at each school.
So Iowa State should shutter their football program to make it easier for Iowa.
They shuttered their baseball program to make Iowa baseball better, and that's the only Division I program I think left in Iowa. Is it not? Is the University of Iowa? Iowa State doesn't have a program. Northern Iowa doesn't have a program. That's it.
And how's that gone for Iowa baseball? Has that been super helpful?
I don't know. They've been decent. They haven't been terrible.
You know what I mean? Though, like, if you're going to make the argument that's a resources issue and it's a population-based issue,
but it's a non-revenue sport, so it's like if it's not making the university any money, and you could consolidate all of the high-end competition into one program,
let's shutter
why
it at
not?
Lincoln too, then it's a non-revenue sport at Lincoln too. If we're just shuttering all the non-revenue sports for resources, let's do it.
But I mean, it's still athletic competition, and the athletic department clearly values that. But it's like if you want to create a program, build it at one university. Why build it at two? Because especially with the population base that the state of Nebraska has, like why not?
So USD should shutter their football program so SDSU can be better.
100%. I think that'd be a great idea.
Okay. I mean, if that's your argument, that's fine. If that's your argument, okay. So
but that's what we're moving to anyways, is it not? I mean, if you look at the power football landscape, I mean, everything is being consolidated because they're realizing
shuttering other programs. You're just cutting them off from the Holy Grail,
which is basically shuttering the programs because they're not competing for national titles anymore.
You're turning everybody else into an FCS school, basically.
Correct.
Which is fine. So you make an argument. Let's say, okay, it makes sense to shut down wrestling. Yes. I disagree, but let's say it makes sense, okay? He thinks the move to Division I is a monetarily beneficial move for Omaha Athletics. He thinks the only way for them to be viable moving forward. Report comes out in the fall from Nebraska Flatwater Press that there's just millions of dollars missing from the Omaha athletic budget from when Trev Alberts was the AD. That athletic department was in really, really bad shape financially. Nebraska kind of seems like they threw him a lifeline.
I don't think so.
His athletic department still millions of dollars in debt at Omaha.
Yeah, going to D1 is expensive. You got to
It
spend
is.
money to make money,
It
and that's
is.
what Trev knew. And look at Baxter Arena. Go to Baxter Arena during hockey season.
But
he
not
made the
just-
right choice.
They were already Division I.
Correct.
Hockey was.
Yeah, but look at the barn that he built. Look at the
Okay.
barn look at the. I mean, he built him a brand new arena.
Show me where the millions of dollars is, and we'll find it.
Spend money to make money, Ravi.
No, but where did he spend it? That's the question.
In
Nobody
the
knows.
athletic department.
It's just gone. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's Alex Sindelar. I'm Ravi Lulla on the Pillar Exterior stage. DB will be back tomorrow, and hopefully he'll have some little juicy tidbits for us. He's actually out at he's taking Caleb to practice this morning down in Lincoln. So maybe we'll get a little – it's quarterback day in Lincoln. You know that?
I did not know that, but do you think that drive to practice is a little bit different than, all the West Side games and then all the youth games?
Probably
Yeah.
a little different.
It's
longer,
exciting.
A little longer, but he doesn't mind driving. He's a driver. He'll drive all over the place. I'm not about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to consolidate. I'll carpool with him maybe. Keep him entertained on the.
Are you big a flight travel guy? Do you like getting on planes?
No.
So you like staying in one place?
It's the reason I've lived in Omaha my whole life, my guy. On the hotline here, we've got our guy Matt DeMarinis from the White and Blue Review. Matty, how are you this morning, bud?
Yo, I don't know why you guys are bringing me up the segment you just had, but I'm good. I'm good. How are y'all?
We're doing all right. That's a, it's you doing okay, bud? You got a little Phoebe Buffet like sexy voice going on here.
Oh, is that what it is?
I don't know. We're just maybe got the rasp.
I got sick in Detroit, so that's why I sound like I sound. But yeah, I don't know. If it sounds sexy, that's good. That's good. I might use that.
It does. I feel like this is a 1-900 number now.
I feel like a lot of people get sick in Detroit.
I like Detroit. I just got sick there. It was John Walker's fault. He came sick, and then we hung out, and then I got sick from him. So.
To be fair, I think almost everything is John Walker's fault.
That's fine.
I'm just kidding. I don't know John at all. Matt, let's get into Creighton a little bit here. We're kind of wrapping up, putting a bow on their season, and I guess to start off is how do you feel about the way the season ended? I know you're less emotional about it than I am because you're a professional and I'm a crazy person, but like, how did you process that ending against Tennessee?
Well, I mean, I certainly saw it coming. Like I guess, as a possibility. Like I knew Tennessee was really good. I knew there were plenty of ways for them to win the game, and I just thought Creighton had more ways to win. So that's why I thought Creighton was still advanced.
Well, you probably didn't anticipate the refs letting them cheat either. So that's...
No, I kind of did.
Thank you for indulging me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. I certainly anticipated that being a way that Tennessee could win the game if they were allowed to
commit aggravated assault on a basketball court.
Yeah,
for 40
somewhat.
minutes.
It's just like if they were allowed to be really physical without any,
repercussions whatsoever.
Yeah, without Creighton having a layup line to the free throw line, basically. And to Tennessee's credit, like that's the thing with basketball is like sometimes you don't know how the game's going to be called until you get out there and start knocking bodies around, and then once you realize what's good and what isn't, you kind of have to adjust to your moving target there in terms of the rule set. So, Tennessee was really physical. They were bumping cutters. They were holding drivers. They were grabbing, and it was all being let go. So they just kept doing it, and I guess Creighton did adjust to it at times, but they also kind of got knocked around at times too. So you got to give credit to Tennessee for, establishing that, testing the waters there. Once they realized they could do it, they kept doing it. And yeah, that's kind of how they won the game with physicality, honestly. Like, they knocked out some big shots, but Creighton did as well. I think the overall difference in the 40 minutes was, the level of physicality that Tennessee played with, because it was pretty jarring to see it courtside. You know, that to me isn't like, I don't think it's a problem to. I have kind of a, you know, I see people kind of argue with the freedom of movement rule or, you know, mindset there. I don't mind restricting freedom of movement in basketball. I just think you need to beat the person to the spot to do it. So when you're holding and pushing and doing all that kind of stuff to restrict freedom of movement, then I think you're doing it in a way that isn't good for basketball.
Yeah, you should have to be in a legal guarding position to be
correct.
allowed to legally guard someone.
Yeah, I think it's fine to restrict freedom of movement if you're moving your feet and beating your guy to the spot that they want to get to.
But it's the grabbing and clutching and hand checking and shoving Kalkbrenner with two hands in the back while he's got the ball in the post, which maybe I have a bit of an issue with.
Yeah, I mean, especially when they're at a size disadvantage there, you kind of let them even out the playing field in a way that is within the rule book. So, I mean, it is what it is. Like, you know, Creighton still had opportunities to overcome that, and you got to give Tennessee credit for that, because in the moments where they needed to actually make basketball plays to win the game, they did. So,
right.
Ultimately, that's how the game was decided. But, you know, there was a lot of stuff that was let go too.
Matt, I'm glad that you're here with Ravi and I today, because I want to talk. Yeah, I mean, Jacob's not here, which, I mean, we talked about that a little bit last night in the group chat. Maybe he is AI and he hasn't existed this entire time. But I'm glad that you're here, because we talked in the group chat a little while ago about Ryan Kalkbrenner potentially being one of the greatest Blue Jays to ever play, maybe even the greatest. And I wanted you to pontificate on that a little bit more, because I think, especially as we wait for his decision whether he's going to come back or not, and regardless of that, I think his jersey is going up in the rafters. And I just kind of want to get your perspective on his career at Creighton and how great it really was.
Yeah, make your argument. Make your argument that, because you to be fair, and DB and I talked about this a little bit, but you made the argument that he is the best Blue Jay of all time. So make your argument.
So you guys argued about my take without me there. Is that what you're saying, right?
Yeah, we talk behind your back all the time.
Nice. Okay.
I just assume you're listening, so I think it's in front of your back, but I don't know. I could be wrong.
In front of your back.
Gotcha. So behind the back. Yeah, I think here's what we talked about on the pod. I think we went like 30 minutes. We went way overboard on it. My argument is that Doug should be supplanted. My argument is that there's like a GOAT tier now, and Kalkbrenner's on it. Because I said, basically how I put it to Jacob was, I'm not going to die on the hill that Ryan Kalkbrenner is the Creighton GOAT, but I would hang out there on a nice day. You know what I mean? I think
it's 70 and sunny. You'd maybe like have a timeshare there.
You'd sign a lease.
I'd check out the views. You know, I would just like, I think it would be a nice hill to hang out and, you know, have a little.
So you're not gonna die on that hill. You might live there for a while.
Yeah, I just hang out there, and then I would also go to the Doug Hill and hang out there too for a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I would go to both and feel comfortable, because I can the people that kind of came at me when I introduced it. And first of all, I introduced this last year when Kalkbrenner had a 30-piece. So I'm like, hold up, if this continues and he comes back again and does X, Y, Z, that's a ridiculous resume that is kind of unprecedented for a Creighton player. So what are we talking about in terms of historical perspectives? And then people come at me and say, well, Doug did this, Doug did that, Ryan's never done this or that. And I'm like, well, Ryan's done this and that, and Doug's never done that or this. So you can do both, and that's my argument is, if there's a GOAT tier or a Mount Rushmore or whatever you want to put it on, I think Ryan Kalkbrenner and Doug McDermott are the same tier, because even though they went about it different ways, I think their impact was equal. So, I think Doug impacted Creighton basketball in a way that was unprecedented, and I think Ryan Kalkbrenner has also done the same. So that's my argument, is like, you look at...
But Doug McDermott's a better basketball player.
No, he's not. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, consecutively.
3-time All-American.
3 trips to the Sweet 16.
National Player of the Year.
No, I understand that. That's fine. But Ryan has done something that only Patrick Ewing's ever done in Big East history.
Okay.
He played tougher competition than Doug throughout his entire career.
Okay.
Don't forget that part either.
But most of the accomplishments you're talking, most of the outside defense player of the year, most of the accomplishments you're talking about with Kalkbrenner are team accomplishments, which matter. They count for him.
I get that one a lot too, and I have just one question to that.
Let's do it.
In every single GOAT debate we've ever had in the history of mankind,
Has
winning ever been excluded from the conversation?
No, but neither have the individual.
No,
but neither have individual accomplishments.
It's a GOAT debate. Winning matters.
Although I will make the argument that in college GOAT debates, at least college basketball.
Why?
I'm not saying it makes sense, but we do leave out team accomplishments in college basketball GOAT debates.
So then Pete Maravich is the GOAT.
A lot of people believe that.
I was going to say, who's your college
A lot of people believe Pete Maravich is the best college basketball player to ever play.
Who?
No one does.
Go look up any list. Go look up any list.
Everyone, right? With a brain?
Yes.
Cinder, correct?
Are we counting?
Kareem. It's Kareem.
60 titles don't even count.
If you put Maravich and Lou Alcindor up together, who wins that? It's like 85-15 Kareem, right?
Uh-huh.
Probably, yeah.
Ravi, I'm asking you.
Not Kareem, Lou, but yeah.
Well, how many games did he lose in college, Kareem?
Probably
Lou?
Like none or one.
I think he lost one game.
Come on.
Okay, we're also talking about 1960s basketball in college, where we're having different discussions here. It's like the Bill Russell thing. Yeah, no, it is, because Bill Russell's 11 aren't the same as Jordan's 6, right? Like those are
the GOAT debate is about winning. That's the trump card.
It is.
It always has been.
And if that's the case, then Kalkbrenner's the GOAT.
It's the trump card when everything else is even. It's the trump card when all else is even or close. Okay, so Robert Ory's better than Michael Jordan. Done.
No, he's not.
I thought winning was the trump card. I thought winning was the trump card. He's got 7. MJ's got 6. What are we doing?
But the other accolades.
Oh, the other accolades matter too. So like Doug's 3-time All-American, Doug's National Player of the Year, Doug's 4-time Conference Player of the Year. That matters too, right?
Okay, so if you put Doug McDermott on this Creighton team, how far does Creighton go in the tournament? They probably win it all.
They win a national championship.
Right.
Oh my God.
You don't think if you put Doug on this team, they don't win a national championship?
Okay. You want to go back and rank what Creighton's adjusted defensive was when Doug was there, or does that not matter?
Well, it matters a little bit because he didn't have Ryan Kalkbrenner protecting the rim, and he had a bunch of Missouri Valley guys guarding the guys on the perimeter. So yeah, I think they could have survived with Doug playing defense in the Big East.
Oh, without a Kalkbrenner.
I'm not talking about without. You said put him on this team.
That's what I said. I said put Doug on this team.
Yeah, well, Doug and Ryan together. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. That's literally the question that he asked.
But Doug instead of Ryan, we already saw what happened.
Okay, but then put Kalkbrenner on Doug McDermott's teams. They probably make Sweet 16s.
Maybe.
Without a doubt.
You think?
But the fact that you think it's a maybe means they're on the same tier, in my opinion.
Correct.
That's
in terms of team accomplishments.
I think
Kalkbrenner doesn't come near Doug for individual accomplishments.
I think Doug impacted the game in the same number of ways that Ryan did, just in different ways, but in the same number of ways. That's my point. My point is the success is not an accident.
I don't think it's an accident either. I also think he's playing with dramatically better basketball players.
Well, I mean, I think the stuff that Ryan does, I think there's stuff that Doug did that Ryan can't do, and there's also a lot of stuff that Ryan does that Doug couldn't.
So here's what I'm going to say. Here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that we're going to find out pretty quickly how much Kalkbrenner meant to the success of Creighton's teams.
No, he's coming back next year, so it's fine. We'll find out next year.
Well, then there you go. It doesn't matter. When the absence is there, when Kalkbrenner is no longer at the university, we are going to see the impact that he made, just like we saw with Doug.
Yeah, that's fair, but they have better players around him now, so they're not going to have a 14-15 like drop-off.
They might.
They're not.
They've changed their entire defensive game plan again.
I guarantee you they will not go 9-21 or whatever they went like they went in 14-15. That's not happening again under McDermott.
They have had 3 straight years of finishing in the top 25 defensively on Ken Pom. Find me a stretch of Creighton basketball where that's ever happened.
That's terrific. Good for them. Really happy for them.
Okay, well, yeah, you should be because they also have 2 Sweet 16s and an Elite 8 in there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm thrilled about it. That's great. You put Doug on these teams, they probably win a national title. So,
Oh. I mean, Doug was on Creighton's basketball team before. You know that, right?
yeah, with a bunch of Missouri Valley guys.
What does Missouri Valley guys mean? You know, Baylor Shireman's like a Summit League dude who's what's worse than the Valley. Stephen Ashworth is a Mountain West guy, right? Like I can
Mountain West is better than the Valley. Yes, it is. Stop it. Stop.
The Valley.
Stop
it. The Valley that Doug played in the Final Four team, my dude.
Stop it.
It's true.
Fred Van Vliet, you think that you remember that guy?
Ron Baker.
Ron Baker.
He's playing overseas somewhere.
Fred Van Vliet's making $100 million in the league, isn't he? I'm pretty sure he was a stud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was fine.
That Valley wasn't a pushover. You know what I'm saying? It is. You know, maybe now it might be, but it wasn't then.
You have any more questions for him?
No, I'm very satisfied with this interview.
You tell me to bring me on to make me argue that Kaufman is better than Doug.
No,
I did not. That's not why I brought you on.
He didn't bring you on at all. He doesn't even work here.
I said both hills. are fun to hang out on. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
Yeah, one hill is just higher than the other one, and it's Doug's. It's fine.
I said don't die on either one. Diversify a little. Get more experience in life.
Matt, as we look at the off season, I'm just gonna pretend like that whole 10 minutes didn't happen. As we look through the off season and look at what Creighton's potential needs are, what is you're obviously if Kalkbrenner leaves, having some sort of rim protection and big man is a pretty big need. Although, at least
you don't think it is?
Are you? I mean, well, is it? I mean, do you think Fred King is who he can be? Who Creighton needs him to be? What do you think they need as they head into this offseason to try and get over that hump of where they were this year, where it seemed like there were some deficiencies at times?
Yeah, like I guess some of the. I think every team has deficiencies. First of all, that's a point I want to hold on to there. But I think the way Creighton's kind of been building their teams, maybe just a little bit more. If they can get a little bit stronger and athletic, maybe on the wings or in the guard core, I think that will shore up maybe some of the ways you can exploit weaknesses, I guess, because then the gap will be, I guess, smaller. The margin of error will be small or bigger, So that's probably a need there. I'm thinking, it's hard to know because you don't know who's coming back and who isn't yet. But if you just assume that Trey Alexander has played his last game and Ryan Kalkbrenner has played his last game, then you kind of have to decide: do you want to go back to 2021, where you kind of handed the keys over to some
bunch of freshmen?
Studs?
Yeah,
not a bunch of freshmen. You want to put some veterans around them, like they had Ryan Hawkins, Alex O'Connell. There was a buffer there, so it's not just a total like rookie free for all.
But it would be Larry Johnson, Jackson McAndrew would be the main freshmen that you're talking about,
and Ty Davis, yeah, and then obviously.
Well, we assume Ashworth is back, right? So you wouldn't have to hand Ty Davis the keys quite as much.
Yeah, right.
Which Ashworth then acts as Hawkins in that situation. Right?
Ashworth and
he's the veteran.
Maybe Mason
leader.
Miller is the Alex O'Connell.
Right.
Yeah, and then you find a veteran big who is kind of like a Keyshawn Fizel, just a good locker room dude who could
back up big.
Minutes. Yeah, well, I mean, I think you probably want an impactful big with the way this roster shakes out. That he would be like someone you would find like in a Ryan Hawkins role. So, but you'd have leaders that have been there and done that around young guys who you would give a lot of runway to play through mistakes and kind of learn their way and what it's like to play college basketball at this level. So,
where are you at with Frederick King moving forward?
Saying Kaufman come back, that's a different story, because then you're still playing to win now.
Right.
If they don't come back, then you can kind of build something that is certainly needs to be in the NCAA tournament, because that's the standard you kind of set now, but you're allowed to kind of have a little bit more up and down performances in order to give those guys lessons they need to learn to be where they need to get back to, which is where they were this year and the year before that.
Where are you at on Fred King moving forward as being a viable starter at the 5?
Well, right now I'm not there, but I've certainly seen guys kind of just the light bulb goes off and then it comes together. Like, I mean, I guess if I were to think back to a recent example, or not a recent example, but an example of it happening at Creighton, is probably Jeff Griselle. But I mean, his thing that held him back early was mostly injury related. So it's not like it wasn't always there.
But he ran like a building.
I'm just saying he's still playing basketball to this day, and
no, that's fine. But like part of what held him back is that he moved like Sasquatch.
Well, the reason he moved like Sasquatch, according to you, is because he had ankle injuries left and right. So I mean, it was kind of hard to move for a big guy.
Okay,
I mean, he wasn't moving like Giannis before the ankle.
I'm just saying, you don't need your 5 to move like Giannis, man. College basketball. I'm saying, like, there has been a precedent before for a guy that you don't think is going to do it for it clicking. You know what I mean? And we've seen flashes with Fred, mainly last year when Kalkbrenner was out.
But he's had his moments.
Where it looked like there was some potential. He had some moments. So, I mean, there's something there, but it just hasn't, the light bulb hasn't gone off. I don't know if that's because in Fred's mind, he just sees Kalkbrenner and says, I'm never playing over that dude, and why.
Which is understandable.
Which is understandable for sure. But I mean, there's also, I think I wouldn't be shocked by it, but I don't see it right now. So right now, it would probably behoove Creighton to kind of look for a Kalkbrenner replacement there if he ends up leaving.
Okay, so could you see a world where Creighton starts Jackson McAndrew at the 5 and they play like a death lineup style of game again? Do you think they would return to that where they have all 5 players on the court who can score and kind of,
I bet it would be Trout at the 5 and McAndrew at the 4.
But at the same time, I mean, you have a lot of depth. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, you could put Miller in the starting lineup, you could put Green in the starting lineup. And you could have Jackson McAndrew. You would instantly add a lot of length and a lot of shooters, Green's going to get you rebounds. Miller's going to get you, spot up shots. I don't know, Matt, do you think that's a viable possibility going into the future where you sacrifice a rim protector in order to get more points?
For death lineup.
I mean, I feel like everything you just laid out there we could talk about next October.
Well, but you're on the show in April, Matt, so let's talk about it now.
Well, it's baseball season. Yeah, I think it could be a possibility for sure. It just depends on how they acclimate. Like, what can Jackson do at the 5? What is your defensive identity without Kalkbrenner? Are you gonna change things up in terms of your style because now you have to keep everybody away from the rim as opposed to sending them there all the time? Because like. Look at Nebraska, for instance. Like, Nebraska doesn't have rim protection, so they have to protect that area of the court from anyone even hitting them. Creighton kind of the opposite way. They don't really have great perimeter presence that they have to push everything to the paint. So it just depends on how the guys kind of work the offseason and how the roster comes together. But certainly offensively is going to be where their bread butter next year.
That's Matt DeMarinis from the White and Blue Review. If you've ever wondered what our group chat looks like, it's a lot like that where we just yell at each other and then we sign off by saying, love you, buddy.
Love you guys. Thanks.
Love you, Matt.
We'll be back more with Hurrdat Sports Radio next. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. Live from the Pillar Exterior stage here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. That is Alex Sindelar. I'm Ravi Lulla, and I'm here to remind you when you're driving, hands on the wheel, eyes and focus straight ahead. The driver has one job, that is to drive. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Those are rules that Alex follows all the time because he's on the road a lot.
That's correct. I never text and drive.
Out driving to Western Nebraska.
That's right.
Put that voice to text is for. You just hit the little button and you go like, hey, what's up?
Absolutely.
Focus.
Focus.
Hands on the wheel.
Need to get to York.
Got to get to York.
Got to get to Hyannis.
Never been to Hyannis. I've been to York. Played some basketball games in York. Never been to Hyannis.
Hyannis is it's
Are you
okay.
guys going?
Where is Hyannis?
So it is north of Ogallala.
Where is Ogallala?
Ogallala is west of North Platte.
Oh, so it's way out there.
If you keep going on 80 past North Platte,
you get
you'll go to.
And Hyannis is a little north of Ogallala.
Is there anything west of Ogallala? Is there anything west of that town? Isn't that like the farthest west
Isn't
town?
McCook further west than North Platte?
McCook is south of
Oh.
North Platte, so it's closer to the Kansas border.
Gotcha.
I mean, west. Then you get to Scotts Bluff. I mean,
Scotts Bluff is the furthest west you can get, basically, on 80.
pretty well. Shadron, I guess, on 80. Yeah. No, it's actually. I think Ogallala is the last town because Ogallala is in the Mountain Time Zone,
Oh,
which
there
people
we
don't
go.
know.
I
So
didn't
it's
know.
really funny because it starts right at Ogallala. So when I do get into Ogallala and I do stay the night,
Yeah.
I have to account for the time change, but then it's 5 minutes back east and I'm back in the central time zone. And I'm like, nah, that's worth it.
That's
Glad,
wild.
glad that that's not archaic at all. But which I love Ogallala. It's a great little town. You gotta go visit, go and see Lake McConaughey. I think it's Nebraska's ocean
There
because
we go.
you can't see the other end.
Oh, nice.
So the horizon drops off in the water. It's really
I
neat.
can't say I've been to Ogallala. I've been to North Platte. I've been to McCook. I don't think I've been to Ogallala for anything. So maybe we'll go I bring the boat out there.
Absolutely.
Have a little boat day.
I don't have a boat, but we could bring one out.
No, we can bring my boat out.
You have a boat?
Yeah.
When did you get a boat?
Last year.
You
Last
make boat money?
We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
No, I do have a boat. It's nice. It's like a 26-footer. It's a good size.
Wow. What are we doing? We should be on the boat.
We'll go out this summer. It's out at Lake Manawa. We go out and hang out on the boat.
Shane, you can do the rest of the show by yourself, right? We're gonna go on the boat.
Well, Natasha's busy, and she's the one that actually knows how to sail it. So
No, true.
we
Okay.
have to wait till Natasha's available. I'm really just there for the vibes on the boat.
Yeah.
I'm not there to actually sail it. That's not what I do.
Seltzer, sunglasses,
Yeah.
swim trunks,
100%.
golden.
Some linen.
Maybe some
pants.
yacht rock.
Oh yeah, definitely some yacht rock.
Yeah.
100% some yacht rock. So I'm back here to continue to defame Trev Alberts.
I will defend Trev Alberts.
I mean, defame him with the facts, so I guess it's not really defaming. So I mentioned earlier, I think, we've been giving Trev Alberts the benefit of the doubt a lot with why we're so angry about him leaving, right? I mentioned earlier that maybe we're reading his career incorrectly, and that's why we were so upset about him leaving. I mentioned earlier that he left ESPN under tenuous circumstances. I wanted to look it up to make sure I wasn't correct. He was fired by ESPN.
He wanted to be Kirk Herbstreit, right?
Because he breached his contract, because he just didn't show up for work,
Mm-hmm.
because he didn't, quote, want to play second fiddle to the game day crew. He wanted to be basically Kirk Herbstreit. So that's a good way to work with your employers, is to just be like, hey, I want to be the main guy. I'm not the main guy. Deuces, and then get fired for it.
Right.
Tough hang.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, do you watch College Game Day at all anymore?
Not a ton.
No. I mean, that program's kind
This
of.
was 2005, though. It was still pretty prominent in 2005.
It's true.
But
And-
and like you're saying, this 2005, so that was 19 years. I mean, a lot can change.
Well, let's
for
see
a person.
let's see
for
what
a person
changed.
can change in
Let's
19
see what
years.
changed. Okay, so we went to Omaha.
Let's take a peek.
In 2009, and tried to move him to Division I, cut football, which makes sense. You say it makes sense to have cut wrestling. I disagree, but we'll leave that there. I certainly think it was handled poorly how he cut wrestling, basically telling them as they got off the bus from winning a national championship that, hey, you're gone.
Always go out on top. I think Trev knows that as a competitor. It's like, hey, you guys reached the apex again.
Kent, by the way,
Let's call it.
Kent, by the way, says that UNO was actually D2 wrestling at the time and was
Okay.
self-sustaining. They didn't cost the university anything. So they were self-sustaining at Division II. It probably would have cost them money to continue the program at Division I. I think an investment that would have been worth it, but we'll leave it there, right? What
Okay.
we do know is that, yes, it costs a lot of – they were in bad financial shape when the move to Division I was made. That's part of the reason they made the move to Division I. They did not get in any better financial shape. Moving to Division I is expensive. I understand that. Here's my issue with his time at Omaha. It's not that they were in bad financial shape. It's that there are millions of dollars unaccounted for. If we knew where all the money went and they were in tough financial shape, that makes a little bit more sense. But the Nebraska Flatwater Free Press put out a story about Trev Alberts that largely got ignored.
Yeah, I
or
think,
at least forgotten quickly.
Well, everybody called it a nothing burger or whatever, but it really was
it's not a nothing burger,
but it was the recounting of a memo.
It is the recounting of a memo, but a memo that says Trev Alberts presided over an athletic department that either lost or could not account for millions of dollars.
It spent more money than it made.
But they don't know where they spent it. That was the issue from the memo. A lot of people spend more money than they make. University of Arizona is in like $177 million hole right now.
Right.
A lot of people spend more money than they make. Most people know where that money went. That's the issue. Let's just keep that in mind here with Trev Alberts as we move forward, okay? He's on the job at Nebraska for less than 3 years. The best thing that he did was hire Matt Rule. Is that fair?
I mean, the stadium expansion idea, I think that was going to be a good thing. I don't think it's going to happen now.
It's an idea, but he didn't do anything.
I mean, he put together the pieces. He created basically the quote for what
he created the quote.
Yep.
He got it approved by the Board of Regents.
He had the vision.
He was meeting a lot of resistance in terms of actually getting the money for it.
Right. Which
is not a Board of Regents issue, by the way. They approved it.
Okay.
The president approved it. Board of Regents approved it. It's then on him to find the money to do it.
Correct. Which is donor money, which is fundraising, which is doing all of that kind of thing.
Most of what his job is, right?
Well, pretty much, yeah.
A lot of what your job as an athletic director is to do that. So, but the locker room, championship center, all that stuff was started and completed and fundraised for before he got there.
Correct.
He just oversaw the completion.
Yes.
The stadium project never got started.
It didn't have the time to start, correct?
Because he left.
Yes.
Of his own free will.
Yes.
So that's why he didn't get started. It's not because somebody stopped him.
That's true.
He stopped him.
Well, he left.
He left. Okay.
And
by leaving, caused the project not to get started, or even have an opportunity to get started. Can I make the argument to you that the project that he laid out was a little tone deaf for the current climate of both the football team and the university?
Now, can you explain that to me? Because I disagree.
$500 million project that will probably end up costing more than that by the time it's done. I think the initial price tag was $450. I think most people think it's going to take $600 by the time everything's done with inflation and delays and whatever, right? You bake in a little bit of that there. So $600 million project at a time where the university in general is having a hard time financially. They're having a hard time with enrollment. And the football team that you're building this for has not been to a bowl game in 7 years, makes it harder to fundraise when you're losing.
Sure.
So that's a really ambitious project. Not saying those things didn't need done, but I don't know that he read the room particularly well in understanding maybe we phase this out a little bit. Maybe we do the things that must need done now. Try and get that done, because a $200 million raise is a lot easier than a $450 or $600 million raise. It just is, right? We saw that with the championship center, that basically all that money got raised during COVID. Right. So if you can get $200 million during COVID, you could probably get $200 million now for a stadium. Asking for $500 million now is a little bit different issue. I can make the argument that the best thing that he did, which was hiring Matt Rule, fell after one of the dumbest things that he did, and was basically just luck. He made the right choice.
He could have waited a week and they could have saved millions of dollars, though.
Yes. So financially, not a good decision. Scott Frost was not going to get better.
No.
You didn't have to fire him after Georgia Southern. You literally wait one more week, save a ton of money, which was the point in renewing him in the first place from the last year. So why didn't you just fire him at the end of the last year? It's like, well, Rule wouldn't have been available. You didn't know that at the time.
And he didn't know that he wanted Rule.
Hiring Rule was an accident.
Maybe
in terms of timing.
Maybe he was trying to make a point. I don't know what the point was. Maybe he was trying to do that.
Maybe the point was, I can't read a spreadsheet and read where all these millions of dollars are going to go. I'm just saying, maybe Trev isn't good at his job.
I disagree.
Coming up next, we got Brian Edwards. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the Pillar Exterior stage. That's Alex Sindelar. I'm Ravi Lulla. DB will be back tomorrow. Don't worry.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I think we're having fun.
Mm-hmm.
We'll catch up with Brian Edwards here in a minute.
Were they using the cream cheese to butter the bagel?
As soon as he joins us here to get you a little gambling advice, but
it's got to be touchdown, touchdown, touchdown.
I'm actually excited. I'm going to the Jet Awards tonight.
Oh, you are?
It's my first time at the Jet Awards.
What are you going to wear?
Oh, I got to wear a suit.
I got to ask that first.
Got to wear a suit for sure. I haven't decided which one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably going to go 3-piece, but no tie.
Okay.
Like classy look, but not like super formal.
A couple buttons down.
Like one probably.
Okay.
I'm not going to do like multiple buttons. People don't need to see the chest hair. That's not necessary.
Hey.
But if you do want to go, there are tickets available. It's at the Liberty Mutual Arena in Ralston. Arena tickets are still available there if you want to go check that out. And maybe you'll see me. I'll wave to you. You wave and just be like, hey, see my suit?
Don't I look good?
Don't I look great? So I'm excited about that. I've been to the Outland. I went to the Outland a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to, and DB will be there tonight too. I think he's emceeing. So that'll be fun. But joining us now on the stream here, we've got our guy, Brian Edwards. B, what's going on, man?
What's happening, fellas? How we doing?
Oh, we're doing pretty good. Just, getting ready to go here as we've got Final Four coming up this weekend. And, just we're running out of college basketball. It's making me a little sad, B.
No doubt, man. The boring season is about to be here. Well, I guess we got NBA for a couple of months, but God,
do you bet much baseball?
I used to. I'd retired from baseball. It's
hard
been at least a decade. It's probably like 12 years. Well, I always thought it was the easiest sport to bet on if you're passionate about it and you follow it day to day. But when you go from the late August through March Madness, day to day grind. I'm looking for a break from the ball games, not to be invested every single day in 20 games. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, there's I used to be pretty heavy into baseball as well, and I agree with you. When you're locked in on it, I did think, especially back then, it was the easiest. But now the analytics have become so commonplace that, like back 10, 12 years ago, you could find some real advantage if you knew the analytics and everybody else didn't. Now it's a lot harder.
Yeah, I used to love to play the run lines on home favorites rather than lay in the -160, go -1.5 for +140, 150. But I've been out of that mix for a while.
Well, let's hop back into college basketball while we've still got it. NC State, a pretty big dog this weekend as well. They probably should be at +9. You see any value there?
Yeah, I like NC State here. And obviously they've won 9 straight. They've won outright and 7 straight as an underdog. And there's been nothing fluky about it. I mean, 2 wins over Duke, a win over Marquette, a win over Texas Tech, a win over North Carolina, overtime win over Virginia, 18-point win over Syracuse. Syracuse was playing pretty decent down the stretch. And Purdue has only won by double digits. I mean, I guess it's good for 4 times in their last 13 games, but it's not like, Purdue is an automatic to win by double digits. So
they're not UConn, basically.
Right. Exactly. They're not UConn. And we can get to that in a minute. But I like NC State +9, and I'm going to put just a little bit on +350 on the money line, kind of just catching 83 vibes from this team as I show my age.
Then we've got, you mentioned UConn. They're a double-digit favorite, and they've been waxing everybody. How big would that number have to get before you didn't like UConn on it?
Right. Probably 14.
So it's 11.5 now, but you'd play it all the way up to 14.
Yeah, I mean, they've won by at least 13 in 25 of their 35 wins. They've won by double digits 27 times. They've covered the spread all 10 of these games, to count in the tournament last year and this year. The first four they've won by, first four this year, 25, 30, 17, and 39. And I forget what they shot against Northwestern from three, but it was like 3 for 25-ish or something like that. And I remember I tweeted mid-second half of the Illinois game, they were 3 of 15 from three-point range, and they were still ahead by 30. So they've been throwing up bricks from three-point land, and they're still dusting everybody. And look, Alabama, if they hit 50% from three, they can hang right in there. But I don't think they're going to do that. UConn's defense. I mean, look at what they're. Nobody's even gotten to 59 on them in the 4 tournament games so far.
B, is there any other of the lines for that UConn game? Whether, I know sometimes you're looking at the totals or the first half numbers. I mean, if you're feeling that good about UConn, are you hammering some of those other numbers as well?
Well, I'm not as, strong on it as I was pushing last Thursday when I was, I was saying, big interest in all these UConn plays against San Diego State. I liked them team total over and team total over in the first half, them in the first half. I'm going to go team total over again, though. I am going to go 85.5 over for UConn's team total. They've scored at least 87 only 14 times, but Alabama's given up at least 87 16 times because they're number 1 in the nation in pace. UConn number 1 in the nation in offensive efficiency per KenPom, and the Tide ranked only 104 nationally in defensive efficiency at KenPom. I like UConn's team total over. And now the first half bets were a major sweat in the San Diego State and Illinois game, but they both got there. So I'm going to have a small play on UConn minus 6.5 in the first half, but really small.
Brian, if the 2 favorites win, it would be UConn versus Purdue in the final. I know they get some future lines going out on that. Is there a future line you've seen for that matchup or any of the other matchups that are possible that you're a fan of?
Yeah, I love UConn at 5.5 against Purdue, and you can bet that right now at FanDuel or DraftKings, and I'm sure many other books. And if the matchup doesn't come to fruition, it just cancels, becomes a no play. But I would love UConn minus 5.5 against Purdue. Now, if it's UConn NC State, UConn is 15.5 at FanDuel, 14.5 at DraftKings. And if it's Alabama, NC State, Alabama's 4.5. And so what matchup am I leaving out? Oh, Purdue is 5.5 if it's Alabama.
All right, B, let's move off of college basketball here for a second. I know we're a little bit out on this, but sometimes that's when you can find the better values for UFC 300. I know you're a huge UFC guy. I'm sure you've started to look at these at least a little bit. If for no other reason, to start monitoring those line movements. Anything catching your eye early on UFC 300?
Yeah, I like Charles Oliveira, the former champ, against Sarkuin. I struggle with that pronunciation. I might have butchered it right there. But he's 12-1 in his last 13 fights. Oliveira, that is. He's a plus 190 to plus 200 dog. And look, he lost his title to Islam. Well, nobody's beaten Islam since his first fight in the UFC like 6 years ago. And he's taken out Gaethje, Poirier, Chandler. He lost to Islam, bounced back nicely. Dariush had a 8-fight winning streak. He beat him finished him in the first round. I think Oliveira is a steal at around plus. I mean, you should probably be able to get at least plus 185, but maybe plus 190 or better.
Yeah, I'm seeing him as high as plus 200, which is great value there. So I know, like I said, we're still a little bit ways out from this. That's one you like already. Are there any other ones where you're kind of keeping an eye on the line to see if it moves the direction you like?
Yeah, so I'm probably going to parlay Zhang Wei Li. She's in the women's strawweight matchup. I'm not looking at it right now, but I think she's around minus 350, and Gaethje's around minus 210. I'm probably going to parlay those two. Now, maybe I'll package them with a third fighter, maybe Jalen Turner against Moicano. who had that epic speech like a month ago after he won, or maybe 2 months ago. And I'm looking at Cody Garbrandt as an underdog, plus 250. Now, he had a shaky run there for about 3 or 4 years after he lost the title, but he's won back-to-back fights now. He hadn't been knocked out, most importantly, in like 3 or 4 years. So I think he's, got his equilibrium, so to speak. And look, he's plus 250. He could knock out anybody with that right hand at any time. So that's going to be the first fight on the early prelims. But this card's so stacked. This is one you start watching at fight number 1 next Saturday, April 13th. So I like Garbrandt plus 250. I'm looking to go Gaethje, Whaley, parlay. I don't even know what that. I didn't put that in the parlay calculator. Probably about even money for those two. I might add Jalen Turner to it, but I'll let you know next Thursday.
Perfect. That's Brian Edwards. B, where can they find you?
Oh, at Vegas, B. Edwards on Twitter. Find my content on Major Wager. Wrote about UConn's travel nightmare last night, this morning.
They deserve everything that happens to them.
It sounded like a nightmare last night.
Well, it's a nightmare dealing with Danny Hurley every time he comes anywhere. So he's earned it, I think. That's what we like to call karma, B. I'm not a big Danny Hurley guy.
I hear you, man. I got nothing bad to say because I've been riding them from a betting standpoint, and they've been good to me. So,
well, listen, you can make money off of him and still not like him very much, but I understand your position. B, we appreciate it as always. Make sure you go check out Brian's work, MajorWager.com. B, we'll talk to you next week. Probably talk a little UFC, maybe a little NBA next week as well.
Sounds good, fellas. Y'all have a great weekend. Enjoy the games.
Thanks, Brian. That's Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider. MajorWager.com, BrianEdwardsSports.com as well. That's Vegas B. Edwards on Twitter. Coming up next, we've got Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're now also on KFOR in Lincoln. Of course, we're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. Here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the Pillar Exterior stage. That's Alex Sindelar. DB will be back tomorrow. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're joined now by Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7. Bruntsy, what's going on?
Not much. How you guys doing?
Oh, we're doing lovely. How are you doing?
Yeah. I was telling Shane when we were making some idle chit chat there. Just had a breakfast burrito, feeling pretty good about life.
Okay, so let's get into the details here because I'm very passionate about breakfast food. Where'd we get the breakfast burrito from, or is it homemade?
No, I dropped the kids off and swung by. I was telling Shane, Lincoln is a little bit of not a desert, but you got to kind of pick your spots. I think on the breakfast, there's not a ton of breakfast here. So,
okay.
I just went Whole Foods on the way home. It doesn't matter. A good breakfast, a bad breakfast burrito is still a good breakfast, but it was a good breakfast burrito.
So you weren't staying in line for an hour to get the runza breakfast, or the breakfast runza. Excuse me, the breakfast runza.
I was not. I heard mixed reviews. I don't want to get too out in front of us, but I heard some mixed reviews on it.
I mean, just looking at the picture, there's some things I would change.
Yeah. It looked a little monochrome, didn't it?
It did.
I need a little bit more meat in there. Maybe a little less bread. Like haul that thing out a little bit more.
A little more potato. You got to get the starches in.
Yeah, like maybe a hash brown.
Yeah,
like a hash brown in there would be nice. It
was screaming for some salsa or something.
Oh, so interesting. What if we threw like some chorizo in there?
Well, I was thinking, like an Italian sausage, like a ground Italian sausage, a little spice with the egg and the hash brown,
a little kick in there.
I know.
Is it? You guys might know better than me. Is it a permanent thing, or was it like hey, we're just going to do this and see how it goes? Because I feel like for as many people have been clamoring for the breakfast runza, you'd want to have that dialed in before you rolled it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think this is just a beta test on it. I think they joked about it on April Fool's Day, and then they made it a real thing for whatever reason, but it was very limited supply. But it felt like, their first soft launch, maybe, to see if they could actually work it in.
It was like a market test.
Yeah.
A little bit. It's all right. If anybody from Runs is listening, I've got thoughts. I think I could help. I eat fast food breakfast almost every day. So just give me a call.
There you go.
Bruntz. Let's let's get into actual things, I suppose. Let's go back to Tuesday on the Nebraska Creighton baseball game. I believe you were there because that's what BC told us yesterday. So he might be a liar, though. It's hard to trust that BC.
I was there.
Okay, good. Your thoughts on both how it went and how the two teams kind of how they approached that game? Because I know Creighton approached it very seriously as a win they really wanted to get, but both teams kind of needed that a little bit because of what the rest of their conferences look like.
Yeah, I don't know what Creighton's non-con looks like the rest of the way.
Not much left.
No.
Okay. I think Xavier's probably their next best.
It is,
opportunity for a top 50 type win. Nebraska actually has, I think, 9 or 10 games left on their schedule that are like top 50 type games.
Maryland helps a lot there.
Maryland helps. K-State in the midweek helps.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 2 more against Creighton. They actually go to Kansas in a midweek, and Kansas is kind of, if you look at the initial NCAA tournament projections or whatever, they're kind of on the NCAA tournament bubble. I think they were like in the low 60s RPI wise when I checked a couple days ago. So Nebraska's got some opportunities left. I mean, I think, it was a disappointing night because, you lose 5-3. And the thing that I think Nebraska was frustrated by was that a lot of the kind of issues at the plate that I think that they had kind of felt like they were past as a team kind of popped up again. I mean, they struck out 14 times as a team. Didn't move guys over in certain situations where they'd done a pretty nice job of that in the past. And so from that point of view, yeah, it was pretty disappointing. And, it's one that, I get it on our message board a lot about how Creighton approaches that game so much more, or wants it more badly than Nebraska. I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think Nebraska's been hurt in the past couple of years that they just haven't had a lot of bullpen depth, which you have to have in midweek games like that. But, I think, that was the most frustrating thing for Nebraska was just, some bad at bats, especially late when you had opportunities to score some runs. And I mean, even the second and third innings, Nebraska has 2 runners on, and you don't get anything from it. I mean, that, credit to Creighton for getting out of that situation, but I think Nebraska didn't have very good at bats in that game either.
Bruntz, what do you do if you're Nebraska? Do you have long-term concerns about either Will Walsh or Caleb Clark or both?
Well, I mean, I don't think that Caleb Clark is going to be an option on weekends for Nebraska. I mean, there's a reason he was throwing in a midweek.
Yeah.
He's been so inconsistent, and they tried him on Sundays to start the year. That really didn't work out. I think he'd been considered as an option, as a potential midweek starter. I don't think that's a great place for him. So, I mean, I don't really have concerns because I just don't think that there's going to be a role for him. And Nebraska has the pitching depth where that's okay. I mean, I think in years past I would be a little bit more concerned, but they've got other guys that can easily fill that role that, I think that he was kind of falling back into. And with Will Walsh, I mean, he looked okay. I think he can be a midweek guy for him. I mean, you look at what he's done this season. He had a really good outing the midweek against Wichita State, and he'd thrown three innings of relief against Northwestern on Saturday and been pretty effective. So I think he's a good option for him there long term. I don't have a ton of concern, with what they've got pitching wise this year. Especially, I think that they've finally on the weekends figured out that Sunday role. I think Mason McConaughey could be that guy for him. So that's been the problem is, you've felt good about Sears and Christo for the most part, but it's just been a rotating cast of characters on Sunday. And I think McConaughey has at least shown that he's willing to stay in the fight and give you 5 good innings on Sunday, which, that's sometimes that's about all you need, really, because that kind of becomes a war of attrition on Sundays with the bullpens.
Bruntz, just looking at the season as a whole, I mean, D1 baseball came out yesterday and they released their regional projection, and they have Nebraska hosting with Creighton in their regional. Now, just looking at the rest of the season for the Huskers and looking at that possibility and that reality, I know a lot of Husker fans are kind of snake bitten. Obviously they get ranked this week in the top 25. They go out, they lose to Creighton. And now this other, piece of propaganda comes out and says like, hey, they could be hosting at the end of the season. What do you think Will Bolt needs to do in order to kind of avoid that hype train and getting into his players' heads? What do you think that he needs to pursue with his team to kind of keep them on the level?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you do anything differently. I mean, I think, as a coach, you run into issues where you start acting differently than you have, and I think that this is a competitive team. I think it's a team that is not going to, really get sidetracked by a lot of that outside stuff. I mean, I just think with the way that this team is built and, the way that this coaching staff is, that you're not going to pay too much attention to that. I know that it's more kind of for the fans. It's unfortunate for Nebraska from the standpoint of, you get ranked. I think, some casuals, the baseball casuals are starting to turn their attention a little bit to, what's going on with the baseball team. And then, you kind of lay an egg on Tuesday against Creighton. So you don't kind of get that immediate buy-in, and people are going, oh, typical Nebraska, that kind of stuff. And, I don't think you do anything differently. I mean, it's based on where things are at right now, the first week of April, I mean, Nebraska would be hosting a regional, more than likely just based on RPI. I mean, the thing that they're going to fight is that unless they go out and win 40 or 42 games this season, that's probably not going to happen because, just based on RPI and who you have to play in the Big Ten, it's really difficult to kind of keep that RPI ranking unless you just go out and win game after game after game after game. I mean, the margin of error is just so thin for Big Ten teams. So we'll see if they can do it. But I mean, I don't get the sense that aside from some graphics that are out there and a little bit of outside chatter, I would guess that they're talking about it a ton in the locker room over there. But that's also been the goal. I mean, Will Bolt's talked about it a lot. I mean, they want to put themselves in a position to potentially host regionals, and they're at least in the conversation right now. Which you go back to last year, and this time last year, you already knew that you had to win the Big Ten tournament if you even wanted a chance at postseason baseball. So a little bit different situation this year.
We're talking with Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7. All right, Bruntzy, let's change gears, go to football here. I know that it's kind of part of your family. They're over at 24/7 Sports, but CBS Sports put out a article about one former Nebraska head coach, Scott Frost. Apparently he wants to coach again, so good for him. Did you find the tone of that article strange at all?
Yeah. I did.
Probably a leading question, but your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I know the headline was that he had, grown and learned and from his time at Nebraska. You didn't really get that in the article. I was kind of, how you're kind of waiting.
Yep.
Like you're reading something.
Yep.
And you're waiting for it, and
anything
it
at all
never happened.
And then it ends.
Never. Didn't. It was a 6-minute read, and it was done. I don't know. I would have liked to have known if there was a little bit more self-reflection about his time there. I think that was probably what everybody was kind of hunting for when they started reading that article. I have no doubts that he wants to get back into coaching. I mean, I would have probably said that before the article.
Yeah,
but,
I think that's pretty obvious. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess I was left wanting a little bit from what was there. That's probably my my diplomatic way of saying it.
I appreciate that. I said all the undiplomatic things in the first hour. If anybody wants to go back and check those out, but I understand Bruntz has to tread a little carefully here. Bruntz, I wanted to switch over to actual happenings in Nebraska football now, or I guess maybe potential future happenings. Alan True, one of your analysts over there at 24/7 Sports, has put in a crystal ball prediction for a 4-star running back for Nebraska, Jamarion Parker. Big deal? Not a big deal?
Big deal. I think it's a big deal. He had been committed to Arkansas for a very long time. I want to say almost a year, and recently reopened his recruitment. The thought was that certainly Nebraska was going to be in the mix there, and they certainly are. The running backs coach that recruited him to Arkansas is now at TCU, and that was another potential school that was kind of thought to be in the mix for him. I think they are a little bit, but I think Nebraska's done a really nice job of recruiting him, and it's not. I mean, getting running back talent is really important. I think also you're finally starting to see a little bit of the fruit of Nebraska's efforts in St. Louis. And we've talked a lot about, in the past about how Nebraska needs to get better in the state of Missouri. There's a ton of talent there. They've done better, I think, under Matt Rule, and part of that has been the work of Keith Williams. Behind the scenes, he's a St. Louis guy. He understands Missouri, and Rob Dvoracek, EJ Barthel, they've done a really nice job of targeting guys early in St. Louis, using their contacts down there to kind of find out who's kind of up and coming and that kind of thing, and just starting to build those relationships. So, with Parker. Nebraska. He's been up to Nebraska multiple times. He's up here again today for practice. He's coming back for an official visit. That would be a nice win just in terms of a talented running back, which he is. But also, finally, Nebraska would be back to getting guys out of St. Louis, and it's not just him. I mean, you've got Corey Sims, a legacy wide receiver out of St. Louis as well that has an official visit scheduled. And I think guys in that area are starting to, look at Nebraska as a realistic option now. And that hasn't necessarily been the case in recent years. So that's a good sign.
Bruntz, looking at spring practice, everything that's been going on since it started, who's been kind of the talk of practice, performance wise, who's kind of been surprising that you've been hearing out of the Husker camp and just, around the area as a whole?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's been, more by position in some ways. I mean, I think, you just kind of go through the roster picture, and we got to see a little bit of individual periods and stuff last week during practice. And I mean, the flip that's taken place in the last year in terms of depth and talent on the defensive line is pretty remarkable. I mean, I think that's kind of where your eye gravitates toward first is like, they've got, I would say probably 7 guys right now, maybe 8 guys that they would probably feel okay about putting in a game right now as we stand here in April. And, the challenge is going to be, how do you get a guy like James Williams, who was great as a situational pass rusher last year, on the field on first and second down? And how do you get more out of Elijah Judy, who is, by all means, one of their more talented defensive linemen, but maybe hasn't kind of found, how to kind of go to that level consistently yet. So that they're trying to unlock that, but I really like what that group can be. And anytime you're good up front on defense, I mean, it makes things so much easier for you on the other 2 levels. And, I'll say one other thing. I mean, the other group that I'm intrigued to hear more about this spring is the wide receiver group. And they brought in Nair and Banks. They needed a shot of kind of veteran experience there. But it's an intriguing group of young guys too. I think Ja'Cory Barney might have a chance to get on the field early on. I'm eager to see what Demetrius Bell can do coming off of that redshirt year and carrying 30 more pounds than what he had when he showed up. So those are the two groups I think that at least through the first week have kind of caught my attention, and maybe also kind of what we're hearing as well.
Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Bruntz, am I the only one that spent way too much time looking at that spring league video, trying to figure out who all the blurred out guys were, or is that a me problem, or did you spend some time Zapruder filming that thing as well?
I did not.
Okay.
I may need to.
So you may have have a little bit better mental health situation than I have.
I was wondering, are we going to get like a transfer wire, like a waiver wire thing? Like, are we going to get updates?
On the transactions? I hope so.
Yeah,
that would be incredible.
I like this idea, if for no other reason. Like, it just seems like this is the kind of stuff you did when you were like 12. And also, like, it just seems like Matt Rule and his staff do this stuff because it's fun, you know. Like, it makes going into work fun, and doing stuff like this is a little bit unique. You compete a little bit. I mean, I like it. I've heard some people say, oh, it's kind of a distraction, blah blah blah. Well,
not if you're still getting work done, right? I mean,
right? I know. I mean, and it's like, God forbid you have fun. Like, it's spring ball, you know. Like, it's by the time you get to like the third week of spring ball, I mean, you're looking for anything, and you know, I like it. I really like the wrinkle.
Well, and they're obviously very specifically working on situational things, right?
Yeah,
like the one yesterday was all about like I don't remember what they call it, but it was all about third downs and different distances and stuff like that. Like, that's a very useful skill to have. Why not gamify it a little bit like that? I don't understand the people that have a problem with this at all.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that there's still, for whatever reason, some people think that you should be doing like the Junction Boys stuff. So, I mean, it's
that's famously not legal.
Just get the hoses out.
The lawsuits would be unreal.
Yeah. You don't want to be doing that in the transfer portal era, that's for sure.
I don't know. There's not enough NIL money in the world to make somebody go through that.
Yeah, but yeah, I know. I don't know. I like it. It's we'll see if they do it in the future, but why the heck not? I mean, it livens up spring ball, which I'm all for.
Well, and it makes it easier to ask guys to do the crappy stuff, right? If they know that there's things that they're going to enjoy along the way, like, it makes it a little easier to get through the mat drills or whatever sucks the most. It's easier to get through if you're like, but we have this other fun thing that we get to do.
Yeah. No, it makes everything suck a little less, and that's okay.
I think that's the goal of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
It's my entire life is just
basically like how I roll out of bed in the morning. How can I make this suck a little less?
It's like most of adulthood, right? It's like, okay, I have to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this. How can I make all of this just a little less crappy?
Yep.
Bruntz, as I know, we've only got a couple more open periods left for media on the 9th and 16th, I believe. Is there anything you are I know they don't show you a ton. Is there anything you're hoping to be able to see over these next couple of weeks, or is it mostly just waiting for the spring game to see anything of substance at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be the spring game. I mean, you're like, what we see, it's all individual period. It's, you know, guys doing tackling drills on dummies and guys running routes on air and that kind of thing. And I don't know, you kind of get more of a sense of just like the feeling around things. Like if guys are dialed in, if it's tense, that kind of stuff. But I mean, the spring game is going to be the big thing because, you know, you want to see how two freshman quarterbacks operate in that kind of a situation and how they lead teams and how they deal with a guy, you know, running after them and you know, a grown man running after them and trying to sack them, that kind of stuff. So it's all kind of like the little appetizer leading up to the main deal with the spring game. So, you know, we'll see. They also had a lot of guys that were kind of in green jerseys or in the pit, that kind of thing, with injuries. So, I mean, you're always kind of checking to see who's where with that kind of stuff. But definitely, you'll learn a ton more when the lights come on the 27th.
Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7. Bruntsy, we appreciate it as always. We will talk to you again next week.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks. Have a good one.
You too.
That's Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Real quick before we wrap up this segment and head into some Hurrdat Hot Seat.
Hot Seat
with my guy Alex Sindelar. Want to remind you that you've got until tomorrow to get your prop card selections entered online and activate your entries in person at the Warhorse Casino in Lincoln for the $100,000 prop card challenge for the semifinals and finals of the men's basketball tournament. 25 prop questions. If you get 18 or more correct, you're eligible to win cash and free play. Make sure you get your online selections in and activate your entries in person. Warhorse Casino in Lincoln. That's warhorsecasino.com for a full list of house rules and details. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's Alex Sindelar. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. We're live at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, the La Vista location, because there's two now. There's one out in Gretna as well, but we're here on the Pillar Exterior stage. It's time for a little Hurrdat Hot Seat.
Let's heat it up.
We don't get to this all the time with DB, and by all the time, I mean almost never. As you know, you're a frequent listener. Sometimes the shows with DB get a little away from the script a little bit.
He's really good at that. I mean,
it makes for terrific radio.
Riffin' master, yeah.
But the amount of stuff that we get to on my prep sheet is so low.
Yeah, next to none.
Yeah, it's like 10% is a good day.
Mm-hmm.
We get to 10% of the stuff. That's okay. We didn't get to a lot of my stuff today either, but that's all right. We are going to get to Hurrdat Hot Seat, though.
Let's do it.
I've got one for you first.
Just lay it on me.
Would you rather?
All right.
See, this one's not bad. Would you rather see Creighton baseball in the College World Series or Creighton basketball in a Final Four?
Creighton baseball in the College World Series, hands down.
Not even close.
Not even close.
Don't even have to think about it.
I mean, I was born in '92.
So
Creighton was in the College World Series before College World Series was a cultural phenomenon, as it is, especially as an Omaha
much
kid.
Bigger deal now.
Yes, which I mean, still you see some of the footage of that game and those games in '91. It's like, my Lord, I want that now.
It was well before the expansions of Rosenblatt and all that kind of stuff.
Man, but I mean, I covered the team for 6 years.
Yeah,
and. Yeah, I still follow him, and I still occasionally do some
broadcasts,
some broadcasts for him. But I daydreamed about that. I daydreamed about Charles Schwab Field being at capacity,
all blue,
beyond capacity, all blue. Because I mean, I grew up a Royals fan, so watching the Royals and then watch them get to the World Series in 14 and then again in 15. I mean, I want to go to playoff baseball, but I want to do it here in Omaha with home field advantage, because I think now, as the cultural phenomenon has evolved, I think Creighton fans would dig it. And I wish that there was a little bit more, I guess, fandom that bleeds over from the basketball team into the baseball team.
Sure, because
the basketball season ends, baseball season immediately starts up.
It's they're really good this year.
They're
really good this year.
I hesitate. I thought about that last night before I went to bed. I'm like, am I going to talk about Creighton baseball actually being good on the radio?
They're really good this year.
And man, they got some dudes on that team,
and they score like 1 billion runs.
But the one thing that's hurt them in years past, they just didn't have the depth, whether it was in the bullpen or if somebody got hurt, needed an off day. The talent level dropped off quite a bit. And so this year it's like, man,
seems like they've got
they're like 32 deep. Like they are.
It's a good squad.
The bullpen is veteran laden. It's really good. Their bats are hot. They do not play Ed Service style baseball where it's like they're bunting guys over. I've daydreamed.
And they're winning a lot more.
I've daydreamed so many days of.
Is there any other rooting interest that would be competitive with you wanting to see Creighton in a College World Series?
No. I mean, 1-2, it's probably College World Series and then a Final Four.
So mine is Creighton Final Four, Nebraska Football National Championship are my 1-2.
Okay.
I've obviously I was alive for the Creighton for the Nebraska National Championships.
Yes.
But I was young, it'd be nice to experience it as an adult. Outside of that, like, okay, I've seen 4 Red Sox World Series. Like, I'm good there. I'd like them to be good again, but you know
Absolutely.
what I mean.
But
like,
you've already seen that.
Yes,
the,
like,
the
well,
highest point in the
yes.
mountain.
I
Yep.
agree with you, Ravi. I've seen 4 of them too, and I'm good with that.
Shane wants no more.
Uh-huh.
You know, like a 49ers Super Bowl would be nice, but I'm way more into both Creighton and Nebraska than I am the 49ers.
Yeah.
I've seen Steph Curry win MVPs and titles, and I feel good there. It's really just those two for me. So Creighton baseball.
That's it.
There you go.
I mean, if that happens in my lifetime, I don't even have to follow sports after that. I'll be done.
I'm concerned that the bender you might go on would be fatal.
Brother. You have no idea. No clue. I would be afraid for my life if I was a beer at that point in time.
I think that's fair. Okay, so do you have a question for me?
I do.
Let's do it.
I've got to ask this. You've played many roles. You've gotten many paychecks from different companies in your life. What's the worst profession you have ever been a part of? Worst job that you've had?
Oh, that's an interesting question because I've had a lot of jobs people don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
Like in college, I was a nanny.
Okay.
5 children. It was.
I think I remember you talking to Andrew about this.
It was a lot.
Has Andrew asked you the same question?
Not this specific question, but
Okay.
Being a nanny got brought up. He maybe asked me my most random job.
Because you are a avid not enjoyer of children.
Yeah, don't. As famously, they're a tough hang. I made eyeglasses at one point at Lens Crafters. I literally physically was in the lab making people's glasses.
That's really tedious. It takes a lot of dexterity to do that, doesn't it?
A lot of it's on the machine work, but there is some of it that's like very hands-on, pretty specific, dexterous work. That wasn't bad though. I didn't mind doing that. Worst job was I was briefly in a basically telesales role, selling credit card processing before I got into risk management and stuff like that. And the hard part there was, okay, so I worked for a company that was very big in the industry, but had zero name recognition. Nobody knows the name of the company that processes their credit cards until it stops working.
Right.
So you're basically just cold calling people, hoping they're mad about their current processing situation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you catch them on the right day, maybe you get a sale, right? Hated that job. Cold calling people is rough. Now, if you've got something with name recognition or something that people care about a little bit more, it's a little bit different. But, man, trying to sell credit card processing over the phone was a tough go.
Was that business-to-business sales?
Yeah.
Ew.
It was tough.
Brutal.
It was tough.
Can I?
Yeah, what do you got, Shane?
Can I give you a terrible job that I had?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay. So I can't remember if it was like student for hire or something like that, but it was like you would work for this company and then they would kind of loan you out. So like people would call them and say, hey, I need somebody to do this job. I need somebody to do this. And then they would call you and they would say, okay, do you want to do this job? So the job that I went and did was I worked for a farm and I grew up on a farm. So I was very aware of what a farm would entail. But at one point, the owner got so mad at another person there, he picked him up and threw him in a pig pen.
Oh, that could kill somebody.
It was awful.
Pig pens are, man, I don't know if people know this. Pigs are murderers.
They'll eat people.
They don't care.
Yeah.
And they're so big. Like if you get knocked over in a pig pen, like you will never be heard from again.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point I said, yep, I'm out.
That's scary.
Yeah, that'd be my last moment there too.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not going anywhere near a pig pen. No, thank you.
No, absolutely. I did Gallup at 16 years old. I worked for Gallup.
Oh,
and
surveying.
I cold called people and asked them if they believed in ghosts and like stuff like that. So,
how many people believed in ghosts?
A lot.
Yeah,
a lot more than you think.
I mean, no, cold calling stuff though.
It's
if you have
brutal.
no relationship with them at all, like I don't think sales in general is that bad.
Right.
But especially face to face is easier, and if you can build relationships, but man, just cold calling people is that's a tough go sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, my next one for you. We got about a minute and a half, but we'll continue this in the final segment. If you won the lottery and didn't tell anybody, let's say I think it's at 1 billion right now, the Mega Millions or Power, one of them is at $1 billion, just over. If you won the lottery and you didn't tell anyone, what would be one of the first signs of your lifestyle change that people would be like, something happened here?
So I famously have a Honda CRZ, which is a teeny tiny little 2-door Econo hybrid Honda.
Yeah.
It would have spinner rims on it. I would. Oh,
you're not even buying a new car.
Absolutely not.
You're just putting.
I am making that car look so dumb, and then I would never drive it again. But I would make it look ridiculous, and then I would stash it.
I love that you're not even buying it. You're like, no. I'm just gonna make my current car look absurd.
Yep.
You're gonna you're gonna like hydraulics on it.
Oh yeah.
Like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like the street racing lights, all of it.
Limo tint. I mean the obnoxious, the LED lights around the skirts and subs in the back.
You can get NOS installed in there.
Yeah, and I would never drive that car ever again. I would just stash it, but then people would come over and they'd be like, "What's up with the car?" I'd be like, "Don't worry about it." They'll be like, "Oh, okay."
I would start telling
Kim and some
people.
money.
I would start telling people I was the inspiration for Fast and Furious. Yeah. If I did that to a car.
Perfect.
You're like, Vin Diesel's character was based off of me. Coming up next, we got more Hurrdat Hot Seat here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're wrapping up the show here on a Thursday, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's Alex Sindelar. I'm Ravi Lulla. About to cough here. Sorry. I don't know what's happening. Alex, why don't you ask me a question so I can cough?
Ravi, if you won the lottery, how would people know? And you didn't tell anybody. So it's the same question you asked me, but back to you. So we talked about it during the break.
Yeah. But yours would be that you would trick out a Honda that you never would drive again.
Correct.
That you currently own already, and people would be like, "That's weird. What's with the car?" Mm-hmm. That's a pretty on-brand answer for you, I think. I would go get. So the most obvious thing would be, because most people don't come to my house, so they may not know, like, I bought a new place or whatever. The most obvious thing is I would probably buy either one of those like old school like Defender Land Rovers that's like all blacked out and redone and everything like that, or I would buy a brand new enormous Grand Wagoneer, like tricked out and like all blacked out and everything. That would be the first thing that people saw. They'd go, "Oh, something happened here."
Can I admit something?
What's that?
There was part of me that thought you were going to say, "Yeah, people don't come over too often, so I just get new windows, like on your house." There was part of me that's like, "Ooh, how suburban has Ravi gotten?"
No, I don't.
And I'm glad you went the other way.
I don't know. I would,
for whatever reason. I just
if I need new windows, I'll get new windows. Yeah. But I also feel like people wouldn't notice that necessarily.
Well, yeah, right.
That's you kind of have to be looking pretty closely to be like, "Oh, those are new windows."
But what a practical investment! Windows.
You're investing in your home.
You are. Is your heating bill too high?
You know what I would probably do?
What's that, Shane?
I would probably become a sports talk show host, because then you'd be like, "Man, that guy's doing something different. He's not doing all the same stuff he used to be doing and spending all that time. And he actually knows something about sports now, because he doesn't really care, because he's just got money and he just sits around and watches TV and eat Doritos. That's all he does, and drinks Mountain Dew."
That's a good goal. I think that'd be really funny. Like suddenly Shane's just on in the morning, every morning, and you're like, "Wait a minute, wasn't he producing? Now he's the star."
Hot Danger on YouTube says Alex should donate the tricked out Honda, so some charity has to use or sell it looking that way.
That would be so funny.
That'd be
That's
incredible.
A really good idea.
Hot Danger, well done, sir. Do you have an original question for me, or is it?
I do.
Okay.
No. So with all your travels when you were a basketball coach, famously in Norfolk, Nebraska.
Yeah. Well, so I wasn't a coach in Norfolk. I played in Norfolk.
Oh, okay.
And then the school moved down here, so I coached in Omaha only.
What was your favorite town to go to? Because now I'm of Western Nebraska often, so now I want to know, what was one of those little gems where you're like, you know what, I really don't mind going here.
I don't. I'll be honest.
Okay, hold on. Before you say this, you do know this radio station goes all the way
all the way out to the state.
Yep.
I don't. So the problem with going out and traveling to these places for basketball games specifically is you spend almost no time there.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
drive to the gym. You usually have the food brought to the gym for post game. Sometimes somebody goes picks it up, but that usually wasn't me. And if you do, it's gym, food place, back to gym, back out of town. So like I really did not get to experience, because we're not staying overnight at these places unless we had a tournament really. And we didn't have any tournaments in Western Nebraska. So I spent more time in like Sioux Falls because we had like Sioux Falls tournament, stuff like that. But I really didn't spend that much time in Western Nebraska, despite being in a lot of different places.
Did you play or coach at the Pentagon at all?
No, it wasn't there, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's relatively new.
When I was there, I'm old. And so I didn't play there for sure. I don't think, like, we went up to the Corn Palace, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Up in Mitchell. I enjoyed that. Mitchell's not bad. We didn't spend a ton of time there, but my wife had family up there, so I've been there a little bit. Mitchell's not bad. That's not Nebraska, obviously, but Corn Palace is pretty cool.
Yeah.
For like a place to play as a small school team.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed that.
Nice.
My next question for you, Mr. Sindelar. Do you... okay, I'll do this one, actually. Okay. So we were talking about Danny Hurley earlier.
Yes.
I have a very famous hatred for Danny Hurley. What is the sports team or person that you hate the most?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Like to an irrational degree.
You know, it used to be Wichita State.
Fair, totally fair.
Both basketball, baseball, the whole nine.
Greg Marshall, the whole deal.
Now that's no longer a
Not
part of my life
anymore.
Yeah, I don't really pay attention to him other than watching him win single-digit games in the basketball season in the AAC. I enjoy looking at that. But again, that kind of goes back to that whole Scott Frost thing that we were talking about, where it was like, well, if we're doing well and he's doing poorly, or even if he starts doing marginally better,
you just don't think about it.
I don't think about it.
Yeah.
And so I don't really think about Wichita State anymore. I don't know. That's a good one. I really don't like the White Sox, and so it broke my heart when Nicky Lopez ended up getting sent there. Yeah, that's
tough for you.
Yeah, I really don't like the White Sox. Tigers, I'm fine with. I don't know.
You're a Royals fan. Is there like it's not like you're a Cubs fan? Where does the White Sox hatred come from?
Well, all the years that when the Royals were really good, and it was actually viable to watch more than a handful of games without getting severely depressed. The White Sox were always kind of the common enemy. I mean, they brawled with the White Sox a few times.
Sure,
they're the common enemy of that whole division.
They
like
are.
Everybody in that division.
Everybody in the AL Central hates the White Sox.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's fine. They're pretty unlikable.
Yeah, and so it's been a lot of fun to watch them have a pretty decent fall from grace. But now the Nicky Lopez is there, and they signed all these former Royals players, and I think it's Chris Getz is their GM.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is weird.
A little
Makes me feel weird
for you now.
Yeah, I mean, Yankees obviously are one of yours.
I don't.
But who do you?
They used to be worse.
Sure.
It hasn't been that way for a while. I kind of like Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton. I've always liked Stanton. But I have a weird obsession with exit velocity.
Well, those are two guys then.
And those guys have like the best exit velos in the game. And so that's I feel like Boston and New York haven't been clashing. Like both haven't been good at the same time for a while now to the point where it matters. So I don't like the Yankees, but it's just, they're kind of just there. Obviously, Danny Hurley's pretty high on the list.
Yeah, big time. I don't like UConn at all.
I really hate Danny Hurley. I think he's kind of a garbage person.
Yep.
I also think people need to know that, like, he actively swears and berates fans directly during basketball games. I've sat behind UConn's bench a lot. I've seen him both interact with the people behind the bench and with the student section on his way out. Like, he acts way worse than the Blue Crew or the student section ever did to him.
Yep.
So, like, I think he's kind of just garbage that way. Not a big fan.
And the UConn fan base is especially online on Twitter, which
worst.
It's just so obnoxious.
I really don't like Shaka Smart.
Yeah, but I like Marquette.
I don't like Marquette. I mean, I don't mind Marquette, but I really specifically dislike Shaka Smart.
And see, I like Marquette's fans. They're Midwesterners, and they're usually kind. So
it's mostly him playing, like, actually playing defense on the, like, how is he allowed to be on the floor? What are we doing?
Technically, he's not supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, allegedly, but, kind of like Tennessee's not supposed to be able to perform aggravated assault during a basketball game, but here we are. It's one of those two guys, I think. I think pretty aggressively because Nebraska football doesn't have a ton of villains right now. Like, Nebraska football has been its own worst enemy for a while now.
Right.
So I haven't really been looking externally. As Nebraska football gets better, I'm sure I will find people I dislike more and more, but mostly for me, it's been Danny Hurley and Shaka Smart. My last one.
What do you got?
Or is it your turn? Did I skip you?
No, ask away.
Okay. Do you know what I mean when I ask, what is your Roman Empire?
Yes.
What is your Roman Empire?
Oh, man. That's really tough. Can I throw it back to you while I think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've given different versions of this answer before. People famously know I'm obsessed with Chernobyl.
Yes.
Love Chernobyl. Not like the actual thing that happened, but I find it fascinating.
Love that huge tragedy that happened to the human.
Big fan of Chernobyl.
Okay.
Nuclear radiation is tops.
Yeah.
No. I'm kind of fascinated by like all nuclear things in general. So like Oppenheimer, I'm a really big. I loved that movie. I've found that story really fascinating for a while. The other thing, I don't know if I've given this answer before. Maybe I did or not. Black holes.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Like I'm obsessed with kind of the physics of black holes and the mystery and what that looks like. Like in college especially, I would just go on rants for too long about black holes. I wrote a unprompted paper on Spec at one point about some of my theories about black holes and time travel, and it's I went back and read it. It's not very good, but at the time I thought it was groundbreaking stuff.
Absolutely, probably still is. No, okay, I'm actually going to go with that. I read a lot of Carl Sagan when I was in high school into college, and he kind of shaped a lot of my worldview, especially at that age when your brain's on fire and developing. Yeah, and so I think because of that. I also, this is a funny story, and I'll just tell it real quick. My parents growing up, they built a house, and I got to choose my own wallpaper.
Nice.
And so the wallpaper that I chose, the middle banner of it, and had, it was framed out. The middle banner of it was the story of evolution.
Oh, interesting.
But I just liked it because it was dinosaurs. I was 5. I was like, oh, cool, dinosaurs. And then as I grew up, all of a sudden I was like, wait, there's a chronological pattern here. And I was like, uh-oh, I don't think I can go to the church anymore. But that's a famous, and so space, time travel, all that kind of stuff. I mean, just kind of worked itself into it in science. So,
and that's how wallpaper led Alex Sindelar away from God.
Uh-oh.
Damon Benning will be back tomorrow. I'll be here as well. Thank you, Alex. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Ravi.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio tomorrow.